Blog Talk Radio.
Joe Gansas with Around the Kit.
Hey guys, what's going on? And welcome back. Another installment of Around the Kit with Joe Gansas. I'm your host, Joe Gansas, and for the next 3 hours, we'll be talking drums, 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 and if that's not enough, drums some more. Guys, welcome to the show. 646-787-8027 is the number to talk about drums, drummers, and drumming for the next 3 hours. I want to acknowledge my beautiful daughter, Samantha Ryan Gansas, who is always my biggest fan. I love you, baby, very much. Thank you for calling and listening to the show. She's my number one fan, and I love her. Guys, we are live, 646-787-8027. Let's see if Benny Sabone. What's up, Benny?
Joey, what's going on, bro? What's up?
What you doing, bro?
Well, bro, had a nice weekend. Right now I'm hanging out. Yesterday went to the Jazz and Blues Festival in Long Branch. And I got to say, I seen this jazz band. I didn't get the name. The drummer was incredible. It was uplifting, inspiring, and he just makes me want to play even more. It was great. It was really nice.
Nice. And where was it again?
Long Branch, New Jersey. It was at a beach. And it was awesome. We just sat there, me and my wife. We had a great time. And just to see the horns and the drums and this guitar player, you could see he was definitely influenced by Gadd and Weckl. And
Beautiful.
The guitar player reminded me of Al Di Meola. It was really good, man. I had a great.
Great. Ben, we got a big show tonight. A guy named Richard Starkey, a.k.a. Ringo Starr, is our honoree tonight. When I mention the name Ringo, what comes to mind, brother?
Well, what comes to mind is underrated. I mean, a lot of drummers say, yes, he's fantastic, but there's a lot of guys, over the years, he doesn't really play anything interesting. But guess what? The guy is incredible. I've been listening to the Beatles channel, and you know what? They're playing a lot of stuff you don't normally listen to. And let me tell you something. He's incredible.
Yeah,
Ringo definitely fit the band and definitely underrated. But you know what? He's phenomenal to me.
Yeah. We have the great Kenny Arnoff, a friend of ours, calling up at 8:30. He'll be my co-host tonight. And we have Ringo Starr's drummer at 9 o'clock, the great Hall of Fame drummer, Greg Bissonette. He'll be the first caller tonight. But in the meantime, I'll put you on hold. I always do, brother. I'll come back in 5 minutes. I see Matt Patella on the line. I got to pick up Matt for 1 second. Matt Patella, what's up, brother?
Hey, Joe. How you doing? I thought I'd just call and check it out, see what's going on.
Yeah, I got to play
your
a
show
promo.
has become really big time, man. Congratulations.
Yeah, well, you've always been a big part of it. Listen, can you stick on the line because I want you to be part of tonight's roundtable. Is that cool?
Yeah, that's cool.
Be back in 3 minutes.
I'm going to go outside and get a cigarette while I'm...
Guys, the great Matt Patella, the amount of drumming in that man's brain, what he forgot, we'll never learn. But I always love when Matt calls the show. Guys, here's the brand new one from Doug Miola. This is the brand new one, Behind the Kit.
This is Behind the Kit.
All right, we are back for another incredible night of drummers, drums, and drumming. Hello, everyone. This is Doug Miola with Behind the Kit. I hope that everyone is having an awesome weekend. Tonight, as we pay tribute to one of the world's most famous drummers, the one and only Ringo Starr, I wanted to talk a bit about how we approach our drumming and some things to consider regarding how we formulate our opinions on different styles of playing, as well as on the drummers themselves. Of course, as drummers and listeners of music, we are going to gravitate to what we personally like, appreciate, and have interest in. With the thousands of bands and drummers out there, we can't personally love everything that we see and hear. However, having an open mind to appreciating all styles of drumming and music as an art form and a personal expression is important. Drumming and music are not competitive sports. Our evaluation of a drummer is all based on our background, our personal interests, and tastes. It never ceases to amaze me how negative people can be when it comes to their own opinions on things, especially on social media, YouTube, etc. I put up a post on my Facebook page this week in remembrance of Keith Moon and his birth date. I saw so many positive, celebratory, and awesome comments about him, but of course I had some negative ones like, "This guy is horrible, he plays like a child who has no idea what he is doing," etc. Now, we all know that Keith Moon is a famous drummer, and most of us will never achieve his level of notoriety. Whether we personally like a drummer or not has no bearing on them or what they do. None of us should play the drums to impress anyone but ourselves. Remember also that being famous or famously known for something is not always a measure of skill, talent, or ability. It is a matter of popularity and acceptance and appreciation on a larger scale. When it comes to Ringo Starr, he is definitely worthy of the praise and recognition that he receives. He is hugely influential in putting drums and drumming on the map and is responsible for inspiring so many great drummers that we have come to know and love, and he has probably influenced most of us directly or indirectly in our drumming journey. I read an interesting quote from Steve Smith about Ringo. He says, "Before Ringo, drum stars were measured by their soloing ability and virtuosity. Ringo's popularity brought forth a new paradigm. We started to see the drummer as an equal participant in the compositional aspect. His parts are so signature to the songs that you can listen to a Ringo drum part without the rest of the music and still identify what the song is." Think about that. I think Steve hit the nail on the head. Drumming is a communication instrument as well as a component of music making. Of course, we can play drums and create melody and rhythm all by ourselves, which is awesome, However, being a drummer in a band, group, or ensemble, our job and purpose is to contribute to the overall composition of the song. Our intention as drummers playing with other musicians is usually to supply a rhythmic component and to enhance the melodies and other rhythms in the songs. That is what Ringo has always done, and that is what makes him great. I have seen and read many interviews that Ringo has done, and one of the things that I admire most about him is his honesty, his humbleness, and his confidence in being who he is and playing how he plays. One time I saw him explain how he came up with his part in the Beatles song Come Together. Ringo is naturally a left-handed drummer, yet he plays on a right-handed setup. And this is because his grandmother insisted that he play the traditional right-handed drum setup. Ringo says that he had to play the signature drum fill in Come Together as an ascending drum fill, starting with the floor tom and then going up to the rack tom, because he couldn't play a descending drum fill leading with his right hand. He makes no excuses for his playing because he plays what and how he likes to. We should all be as comfortable and confident in how we play and what we do, right? I hope that you enjoyed tonight's tribute to the great Ringo Starr, and if you have a question or inquiry for us here at Behind the Kit, please send us a message or an email. We would love to feature you on the show. Have a great week, keep on drumming, and I will see you next week on Behind the Kit.
And now back to Around the Kit with Joe Gansas.
Guys, we are live 646-787-8027. I'm looking at my list of calls for this roundtable. We got an all-star, maybe one of the best roundtables. We got Benny Sabone. We got Matt Patella. We got Dave Stark. We got John Bessa and Daniel Glass. Guys, welcome back to the roundtable.
Hey, gentlemen, guys. Hey. Greetings.
How's everybody doing? We have Daniel Glass, we have Dave Stark, we have Matt Patella, John Bessa, and Benny Sabone. I mean, great drummers. Daniel, Dave, everybody, how you doing tonight, guys?
I'm doing
great,
fine.
man. I'm doing great as well.
Oh, we got I got goosebumps every time I look at these numbers, and I got the great Daniel Glass on the line. I got the great Matt Patella. I got the tremendous David Stark and John Bessa and Benny Sabone. And I say, I'm just a little host doing the show, and every week these guys give me the time, and I say thank you to you guys every week. It's a pleasure to have you guys back. Tonight we are honoring, and I want to get your guys' take, your honest take on Ringo. And listen, guys, your take is your take. It's never going to be something I'm going to be mad at. I want to hear your take about Ringo Starr tonight. I have guys like Greg Bissonette, Carl Latham, Scott Metgo, Gary Astridge, again, Bernie Dressel, Kenny Arnold for a little while, my co-host. I got some great drummers tonight. But during the roundtable, let's go right to New Jersey. And the veteran, I'm not going to say the old-timer. I'm going to say the veteran, and Matt Patella, because he doesn't like when I call him the old man. I'll call him the veteran. Let's just say he's got about 60 years experience. That's right, 60 years behind the set. Matt, when I mention the word Ringo Starr, what comes to mind, brother?
Well, first of all, I'm 21.
20. I'm sorry.
Jeez, Joe.
Well, age has no
sorry.
That's it. Age has no factor in playing music. And as far as Ringo Starr is concerned, he did what he did. He put the Beatles. He was with the Beatles all that time. He was part of the Beatles. He's history, And I liked the way he played with the band. I never heard him outside of the Beatles,
right?
But he just really contributed a whole lot. He brought that kind of drumming to another level, like commercial cover tune kind of drumming to another level. I thought he was a great drummer. I still think he's a great drummer.
Yeah.
But I never really studied him.
Right.
It was Ringo Starr. Everybody thinks he's great. So I'm not thinking he's great because everybody says he is. I did listen to him a whole lot, and he does some really nice things.
Cool. Yeah, I think I like to call him a songwriter's drummer, if that makes any sense. Let's go right to a Nashville, a great friend of the show, Dave Stark. Dave, I know you're a big Ringo guy like everybody else. Talk to me about the personal influence. If there is any, you play a different style than Ringo, a lot. But if there's been any personal influence on Ringo, the last 30-plus years in your
absolutely. Career. It's weird whenever people ask me my early influences. I can honestly say I kind of glaze over him, and thinking about it, coming up to the show, my earliest influence. Okay, I remember those little Panasonic tape recorders that everybody had.
Mm-hmm.
I remember my older brother had one. Just everybody had one. And I remember figuring out how to use that when I was about 4 years old. I go in his room, and I just used to listen to Hey Joe. I Hey Jude. I'm sorry, not Hey Jude, over and over and over and over, just like the whole. And obviously, drums were already rattling around in my brain. Future drummer, but just that whole tape that he had, and just always being exposed. Again, having an older brother, I was. It might have actually been my earliest exposure to drumming, at a really, really early age. That when I look back, that was there before my John Bonham influence or before I actually started playing. That's, some of my first recognizable music is Beatles and Ringo's playing. So
great.
There's definitely an influence. And if I could say, same thing, growing up with all these different styles. I remember the first time being somewhat in my early 20s and having a recording session where somebody said to me, he was in New York City, and said, play it like Ringo. And it was like a singer-songwriter thing. And I had a bitch of a time. Like, that just wasn't part of my vocabulary. And trying to play like him and emulate him, I had to sit down at that point in my life and learn how to play like that. And it wasn't easy. Definitely not.
Yeah. Absolutely. Great. The great Dave Starr, guys. We are live 646-787-8027. Let's go to a local drummer who I had the pleasure of seeing live play today, and as usual was kicking ass. Circumstances we didn't control what happened at the event, but John Besser, I know me and you grew up in a different styles. I knew you're a big, Bill Bruford guy, a Neil Peart guy, and even progressive rock and Rush and stuff like that, ELP. What happens when, someone mentions Ringo around you?
You know what? It's funny because in the 80s, it was like the height of the hair metal thing was going on, and I didn't want any part of that. Like, to me, it was like such a basic, like for drummers, it was like, I even now I think about it. Anyways.
Right.
So, which is funny, I at that very moment, I started to really get into the Beatles, which is funny because Ringo is not much of a complicated drummer. But what I loved was every song was different, and he played different. And there was never, you can't go like, play me a Ringo beat. I mean, you can get a general sense of what a Ringo thing is, but listen to any Beatles song. it's a total another thing. It's a different style of drumming altogether versus the metal thing that was, the hand metal thing, which was,
right.
That's the best way I can put it. Ringo saved my life, saved my drumming life.
Nice. Guys, let's bring on a guest. I could say this with all honesty, the most appearances on Around the Kid, and it's the great Daniel Glass. He's been on the show probably 10 times. He just, I met him once, and he gives me so much time. I welcome him back to the show, the great Daniel Glass. Daniel, what's up, brother? How you been? And, you're a historian, so you probably, you study all the greats, all the old gear, Ringo, over 50 years, 52 years or 53 years ago, he came into our lives, I think in 64, right? And the Beatles. But, when you talk about Ringo, what do you, recall about him, Daniel?
A couple of quick points. One is personal, talking about personal influence. Some of the guys have talked about that. First band I ever became aware of was the Beatles. First 45 I ever saw was Please Please Me. My best friend brought it into school when I was in first grade, and I loved that little guitar thing.
What a great song.
First album I ever bought was Let It Be. I was about 6, and I used to sit. We had this wooden stool in my house, and I used to sit with Get Back and go tuk, 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 on the wooden stool for the whole song because I thought that was the coolest thing. So, Ringo was around in my very, very formative years of just getting excited about music. But I want to say one thing from a historical perspective, and I'll talk fast. People tend to think about Ringo in the early years of the Beatles when they were on camera a lot, when they were being filmed a lot. And that's great, and his playing was great, and he did all the right things with the band. But where the true genius of Ringo Starr comes out that people don't think so much about is 1966 onward, when they went into the studio.
Yeah.
And what the Beatles did was the most revolutionary thing pretty much that any band in pop or rock music will have had the opportunity to do, which is that they were the first band that had an unlimited budget. EMI, just they were the biggest band in the world, gave them unlimited time in the recording studio, which meant that they were really the first ones to use the studio as a laboratory in the modern sense of the way that we think of a recording studio today.
Well,
not just capturing the sound of what we did live, but creating it in the studio. And Ringo, his drum parts were so inventive. You know, I think one of the other guys was saying, you know, each song was different. Absolutely true, because they had time to really sit and come up with these creative things and go in the hallways and the elevator shafts and all these weird places to record. And Ringo, you know, when those albums would come out, starting with like Rubber Soul on through Sgt. Pepper's, on through the White Album, everybody in the rest of the music industry, from Jimi Hendrix to Brian Wilson to all of the Wrecking Crew people, when those records would come out, those guys would sit down and freak out about what they were hearing, and they would spend all the rest of their time imitating exactly what the Beatles had done, which is take the bottom heads off the drums. First band to do that in the studio, you know, put towels over the toms, record in these strange ways, use the use of effects. And so, you know, we think about Hal Blaine and we think about, you know, Wall of Sound, you know, I mean, certainly some of that was done before, but they were keenly aware of what the Beatles were doing. And every time a Beatles record came out, it set the standard, and then that would spread throughout the industry. So it's incalculable to me how, influential Ringo is on everything that happens in rock music today.
If
and
I could ask you, Daniel.
Maybe I'm being hyperbolic, but I don't know.
No, great stuff by all you guys, and I'll get to Benny in a second. But God, Daniel, I want to ask you a question. You know, we all have our opinions. You like blue, I like red, you like this, and I respect everybody's opinions. I might not agree with you, but I respect it, and I'm doing this. This is my 90th show, almost 230 drummers, so I don't agree with everything people say, but I respect people in this world because, you know, I learned that everything's not always black and white, and it can't always be what Joe Gansas wants. So let's take a little Neil Peart and Ringo Starr. Who's better? Let me finish that. Whoever thinks it's better. If you think Ringo's better, I got to respect that, brother. If you think Neil's better, don't tell me Neil's better because he plays 1,000 parts in a song. I can't accept that. I'm sorry. After being a drummer for 35
I will say this, Joe. The mantle of world's best-known drummer, at least from my perspective, best-known drummer, not best drummer, best-known drummer, was passed from Krupa to Ringo to Peart.
Right. I'm just making
and
a point.
I think Bonham it now might be considered the best-known drummer to some degree, but at the time I don't think he I mean, of course he was loved, but not, you know, the way known to the public. And the amount of attention they receive. But I will just step out when it comes to comparing apples and oranges, because that's what that is.
I'm just making a point.
I can't say best.
I'm just making a point that, like, in life, you know, people, we all say, oh, Ringo can't touch Neil Peart. Okay, on a technical side, he can. But, you know, is that what it's all about at the end of the day, is who could play the most licks? Is that why we're here in life to play drums? Oh, who's the fastest drummer? Who's got the fastest feet? How about who's got the best brain? How about who can think the best behind the set? How about who could come up with the easiest part instead of the hardest part? How about who can make a song better? You know, guys?
I think that's what it all comes down to. You know, we're for the most part, we're hired guns. We're not the songwriters, though there are plenty of drummers who write songs and write music. You know, but for the most part, who can come up with the best part for the song? That's what our ultimate job is. You know, and that's what his ultimate job was, and he came up, you know, amazing historic parts for songs that are masterpieces.
Let's
Can I
just
say
finish it
something
out.
about this?
Go ahead, Matt.
I can't agree with anything like that. Who's better? That really is crazy.
Yeah,
there is nobody better than anybody else. There is nobody. We are all in a different place.
Yeah.
We work hard to get there.
Yes.
We learn from everybody. And we're all on the same journey. And that's to become better and more creative. I do when people say, who's better, who's faster, I ignore that. I mean, that's total immaturity and unprofessional.
Yeah, I love that.
I agree. The thing I'll always jump in and try to tell people, especially students or whatever, is just be like, the only best you need to be concerned with is your own personal best, and that's
absolutely.
Great. Guys,
that's right on the money.
Let's finish it off by a big part of the show. Benny Sabone, me and you grew up in the heavy metal genre, but, I remember in the late 70s, I would steal my sister's albums, and I broke so many of her needles. I remember Sgt. Pepper's and the White Album were huge to me. Talk to me about Ringo, Benny.
Well, I agree with what everybody says. I mean, for me, Ringo, you know what? I always looked at the Beatles as a whole band. Like, it was like a one-piece thing. Like nobody ever stuck out more than the next guy. So that was Ringo. He didn't stick out. Paul, John, George, they just all gelled together perfectly. But as drummers, when we listen to this guy and he comes up with these parts in the songs, they fit perfect. It's like one of the guys said, it just fits perfect. And that's what Ringo is. I remember growing up as a kid, Ringo, he's okay, he's not that great. They would compare him to the drummer from the Doors. But then when you really listen to this guy and you start playing him, they do a lot of odd time stuff as well. I mean, nobody considers that. He was an incredible drummer. He fit perfect. Like I said, I've been listening to the Beatles channel more and more, and you're like, wow, this is incredible stuff. So, again, what everybody's saying, I agree with. I think he's a phenomenal drummer, and he happens to be the richest drummer in the world, so that's not a bad thing. So, anyway,
that's fine.
Anybody want to
add any, Daniel, anybody want to add any closing comments or anything?
No, not really.
All right.
I think
everybody be happy,
said,
go
man.
home and practice.
Go home and practice.
Hey, Daniel, nice hearing you again, man.
You too, Matt. Aren't you at home?
Yeah, I am at home. I just got done practicing.
Well, great. Then you don't have to go anywhere.
I could just practice. So you getting smart with me, Daniel?
No, not you, Matt. Oh no.
I'm only kidding. Nice to hear you, man. Be well.
You too, man.
Guys,
you too. Everybody. It's always great to be a part of these.
If you guys can stick on the line, I like you to stick on. If you can, I got my co-host calling any minute. Kenny Arnoff. I like you to stick on the line. How many guys can stick on the line? You guys have to go.
Here.
Yeah, I'm good.
I'll stay.
Here he is.
I'm good.
All right. I'm just always, guys. It gives me great pleasure to welcome a friend. I met him this past month in New York City. What a beautiful human being. It's great to always have the great Kenny Arnoff back on the show. Kenny, what's up, brother?
How you doing, man? That's a nice
we are doing.
introduction.
Kenny, you're on a line with like 7 drummers: Dave Stark, Daniel Glass, Matt Patella. Anybody want to talk to Kenny about what tonight is about? Tonight's about Ringo. Kenny, let's give a little your take on Ringo for everybody. I know he's a big influence on your early life, Kenny.
Well, I'm pretty much going to say what everybody else probably would say. Him being the drummer in the Beatles and being such a stylistic drummer with an amazing, unique feel, incredible personality. He did things with the Beatles that was perfect. He did everything perfect, So, and he happened to be in a band that was, changed America. 72 million people saw the Ed Sullivan Show, changed America. It affected my life. My story is, I saw the Beatles and on TV. I was playing outside. There was nothing to watch on TV back in 1805. Oops, I gave my age away. But nothing to watch on TV. So my mom yelled at me. My brother had said, come on in. To come in the house, I thought I was in trouble. The way she yelled, I thought typically I'd probably broken something. And when I got in the family room, there was the Beatles were on TV, and I just, like a little naive, little hyper kid, I said, "Mom, call them up. I want to play with that band." And and then I said, "I want a drum set," and that both those requests were silenced. But a couple things, and a couple of things. One, I realize now, especially after writing my book, I'm like, God damn. When I'm passionate about something, there is no such thing as no. I basically started my own band. I was gardening at 50 cents an hour, saved up. I borrowed money from my parents, and they went to Manny's and got me a cymbal and a snare drum. And I stood up and started a band, played Beatles songs. So I started my own band called the Alley Cats and played Beatles songs. If I can't be in the band, I'm going to do my own Beatles band. And that was pretty cool that I took that initiative. But the cool thing about the story is, my story, and you guys probably heard it all before, is that 50 years later, I'm hired to be the house drummer for the tribute concert on CBS, nice. The night that changed America, and now I'm playing with Ringo and Paul McCartney, and I had just played with Ringo 4 songs at an event 2 weeks before honoring Ringo, and then I did the Grammys with Ringo playing, Portrait. Photograph, whatever that song is. Yeah. So, I mean, it's just like 50 years later, I tell people, dreams come true, but man, it didn't happen by accident. I mean, I've worked my ass off, got my ass kicked from one end of the block to the other, and if I hadn't stayed focused and kept on going, I wouldn't have gotten that call. So it's a beautiful thing. It's a cool motivational story for kids or anybody who feels, can I do it? Will I make it? Blah, blah, blah.
Guys, any questions for Kenny Aronoff? Anybody want to talk to him or ask him anything?
Silence is magic.
We're too nervous.
Daniel,
nervous.
Hey, you know what? You don't have to ask me a question. I'll just start talking.
Hey, well, I have one. I thought I was the oldest guy. I thought I was the oldest guy.
You are the oldest guy here.
You know what my crazy day guy was? I got up this morning. This is funny. We played this big blues festival last night called Lock-In in Virginia. It's famous with Fogarty. I'm staying at the La Quinta Hotel in Lynchburg, and then I'm on a G4 jet. It's like, what? Okay, we're staying at the... If you're on a G4 jet, aren't you supposed to be in a Ritz-Carlton? It's like there's not enough money to eat, but we'll get on this G4 jet. Anyway, so I'm on a G4 jet learning Avril Lavigne songs I have to record tomorrow, and then I land and I come home dealing with the little dogs that, want to lick me and pee on me, and then I'm getting ready for this show, and then I got to go do a Q&A for this killer movie that I was watching at home called Sideman. It's about the old blues guys. And the only reason I'm bringing it up is that it's kind of relevant. I mean, these guys were like, they worked for, they worked for all the greatest blues guys that made history, and these guys are the guys playing. It's a typical Sideman thing. The guy in the back that's coming up with all the hook lines, the drum beats, the lines, and but these guys, I mean, talking about 50 cents. One guy who's Pine Top said, I was making 50 cents a day. Wow. Isn't that amazing? And,
Kenny, if you're there,
amazing.
I got a phone call. Hey, 225, you there? 225 area code?
I'm right here.
How are you?
Hi.
Who's this?
Hi. This is Angie Lamonti. I'm calling from Louisiana.
Nice, Louisiana.
Ooh. Is it raining?
Yes. Hi. I'm an appreciator, major. Appreciate you guys both very much, very much.
You want to ask Kenny a question?
Well, yeah. I mean, I have a lot of questions. Let me get my list. Okay. Yeah. All right. So, something I just learned about Ringo Starr, his real name, Richard Starkey.
Right.
Yeah. Now, all these years, I just learned that. So, actually, this show is actually teaching me something. I'm learning things from Kenny Aronoff, motivational speaker stuff, and I have a question for Kenny Aronoff and Joe Gantis.
Okay.
What Beatles song first did you practice what song did you practice first? And that'll be like,
Yeah, mine's Revolution. I can tell you right now. I remember playing Revolution. I don't know about Kenny.
Well, because I saw them on Ed Sullivan, I immediately wanted to play, She Loves You, Yeah, 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 because that was one of the songs they played. So, that's what I played.
I'll tell you my favorite Beatles song. My favorite Beatles song, I've actually put drums to myself. I put drums to a lot of songs that don't have drums to it. I put drums to Eleanor Rigby, and it kicks ass, man. I should have played it tonight, but I love doing that, putting drums to songs that don't have drums, and that's my favorite Beatles song. But my first one I ever played was Revolution. But a good question, Angie.
I appreciate you guys both, and I love you. With the little help from my friends, I clap my hands and play a tambourine, and I love you guys both. And you have a wonderful weekend. I love you guys.
Well, be safe. I hope you don't get any of that horrible hurricane that's there.
Well, I got my floaties. I'm good.
Your floaties? Nice.
Wait a minute. Back up here. What did you say? Floaties?
My floaties. Yeah, my floaties. My floaties, you put them on your arms.
Oh,
water wings.
Oh, okay.
Water wings.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Guys,
water wings.
Guys, we're on around the kit tonight. We got floaties. We're good to go. Great.
Yeah.
I love it. I
learned a lot. I learned so much. It's just so. The era of the Beatles is kind of like I was born in '67, so that kind of I caught the end of it from my older sisters. So I'm more like '80s, which is John Mellencamp, John Fogerty, Creedence. My major influences are.
Well, Angie, do me a favor. Don't try to name every band Kenny's been in. We'll be here till tomorrow. Don't name every band he's played in. Please. We'll be here till friggin' Friday with Meatloaf, Celine Dion. Oh, my God.
I really appreciate you guys. Really greatly appreciate you guys. Really. Right. And thank you for putting up with me.
Thank you. Thanks for the call. Thank you.
I love you guys.
I've actually got a question for you, Ken. It's Stark here. With playing, and obviously, the amount of people you played for, there should be nothing that would shock you. But playing for a Ringo, does that change the wavelengths in your mind at all, backing him up?
Well, the first time I'd met him before, the first time I met him, I was doing like a Lyle Lovett session or something, and he was next door in the other studio. I just went up to him, and I was pretty hyper, which is usually the case. I just grabbed him and hugged him and lifted him, and he was so funny. I won't even try to imitate what but he kind of like acknowledged that he was being lifted and grabbed very hard. And he acted like a dead fish, and being funny. But playing with him, I was a little bit like, oh my God, this is like too weird. And so I watched him. You can see some footage of me that's on my YouTube channel or something. You'll see me watching him and trying to – actually, that was a live footage from the thing where they were honoring him. And I think we were doing the song Boy where he sings and plays. Yeah, man, I mean, I just totally I didn't want to fuck his thing up, I was trying to follow him. And at the same time study what he was doing. And the feel was like 100% Ringo Starr. He had that certain kind of swing thing. Now, let's go to the concert. The concert was so heavy because it was, everybody was there. Celebrity, movie stars, everybody. I literally ignored the audience as I do nowadays. I just focus on what I'm doing. People said, were you nervous? No, I wasn't nervous at all. I was really, really serious. That's what I was. Very focused, know exactly, like when they changed the sets, there was a song called, Something, which is about 64 beats a minute with Joe Walsh, and it starts off with do bam bam bam. So you start with your left hand on the rack tom. You have to because to get to the floor tom, at least the way I did it was left, right, left on the rack tom, then floor tom, right, left, right. That means you come down with your crash cymbal on your left hand, and then I immediately go the end of one. I start playing with my right hand. Sounds simple, but to do it where the toms sound like they were in the studio, even, not easy, because if you're a musical drummer, you're going to kind of make it swing, make it have accents. So in between, this is an example of what I was doing. In between playing with one artist and the next, it'd be maybe a 10-minute set change. I was literally practicing. I'd have the metronome, and I'd go 3, 4, 3, 4, 3, 4, until I knew the cue. I had all the script and everything. I know who's cueing me and when's that. And when they went go, I went 3, 4, and nailed it. And I did and that's how I did the whole show. And I have to say I nailed it. I'd be the first one to say, oh, man, I messed up that one thing. But I didn't. And you'll love this rehearsal thing. So I'm at the rehearsal, and let's see, one of us, I can't remember who counted off. It might have been Ringo, but it was for Boy. Or maybe I counted off. I gave him the tempo. And I go, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, God, and then Ringo he's singing. He starts slowing it down. So I'm going to follow him. He's the singer. I'm not going to, I try to hold for a second, but if I really think he does not want to be there, and we were far apart, which was horrible. Far enough apart so I don't know if he could hear me, so I adapt to him. At the end of the song, you saw a bunch of rumbling, and some people came up to me, and an old tech of mine, who's Ringo's tech, says, "Hey Kenny, what tempo do you have?" I knew exactly what they were going. They were questioning why I was playing it so slow, and I said, "The tempo I have is the tempo Ringo wants to play it at." That's what I told him.
Nice.
I said, "Dude, it's like I have this tempo, but Ringo wants to play it at his tempo. That's the tempo we're going to do it at." So you know, that's all I said. And he went, "Oh, okay, yeah, I get it."
That's awesome.
You cannot...
Guys, I have to jump in a sec, but I have a question for Kenny and for everybody.
Go ahead.
And it's a question I've been wondering about for a long time, and that is that in that 1964, when the Beatles appeared on Ed Sullivan, Ringo was playing match grip, which is different than a lot of, was very unusual for the time. Most drummers played traditional, and as a result of that, everybody started playing match after that, and to this day, match grip is now the default grip. So I've heard many reasons as to this. I asked Greg about it. Maybe you can ask Greg again. I asked him to ask Ringo a couple of years ago as to why this was. I've heard it's because he's left-handed and it was awkward for him. I've heard, or you would think because the Beatles were playing to such loud audiences, he was doing it for volume. Also, there was a famous drummer that influenced Ginger Baker named Phil Seaman, who was on the scene at that time, who did play all match grip. Again, very unusual. He was a jazz guy. So I don't know if anybody has any insight to this, but what have you all heard?
Kenny?
Because if I ever meet Ringo, that's what I'm going to ask him.
No, you know what? I never, I have never gone down that path. So that what you just told me was very informational for me. That was incredible, especially when you just said that Seaman was playing match as a jazz drummer.
He was all matched. Yeah, which is really odd,
well, maybe he was an orchestral guy first, and then he switched over to drum. I don't know, man. That's very creative to be playing match that far back. Because what switched me was I went and saw this orchestra, the Mahavishnu Orchestra, and there's Bill Cobham. And I went, what the hell is this guy? Where did he come from? Like, I literally, and so when I saw him do that with that kind of speed and technique, I went, all right, and I just started learning all my rudiments again. Match grip. I spent a whole summer, So I don't know. That's a great question, bro. Really good question.
Well, if you run into Ringo again down the road, I'm hoping to get the word from the horse's mouth in some way, shape, or form.
I will, man. I'm going to remember that. I promise. I'll remember to ask him. I'll give him a big hug and squish him like a fish again, And I'll say, I'm not letting go until you tell me the truth.
The truth.
At that point, he'll tell me anything, right?
Great.
You know what?
All right, guys, I have to roll.
Thanks, Daniel. The great Daniel Glass.
Have
Thanks,
a
brother.
great show, and I'll try
same
to
here,
jump
man.
back
Thank
on
you,
in a little while.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
All right.
Kenny.
Take care.
Take care, Matt, Dave, and Benny. We got some phone calls here. Let's see who's on the line, Kenny, for us. 8250 area code. You there? 250.
That's me, Bobby B, the Drum Buddha, calling from Kelowna, BC, Canada.
How are you, Bobby?
I know
How you
that
doing?
place.
Kenny knows
Yes, you do,
Kelowna.
Kenny. How are you?
Good.
Yep,
man.
how are you,
I've
my
been
friend?
to Kelowna many times. Did you see me with Fogarty?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And
that's
you did the
cool.
Wentworth Music Clinic recently.
Right. Exactly. I remember the hotel I stayed in.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a whole lot of fun.
Of course, tonight, thanks for the phone call. We're talking about Ringo, and Kenny's my co-host for most of the show until he's got to leave. But your question about Ringo, that maybe we can answer it together.
Yeah, a couple of things. First of all, before I ask my main question, I wanted to also mention I studied with Ted Reed, and Ted was a very early proponent of match grip.
Wow. You studied
He was
with
doing
Ted
match
Reed?
grip in the late 50s because he hung out with all the Latino and Cuban guys in New York City.
Oh, my God.
Ted was one of the first guys to switch. That photo that's on the cover of all his drum books with him on the Billy Gladstone snare and stand, that was taken right before he switched.
God, this is great information.
When I studied with him, he didn't do anything traditional. He wouldn't teach me a single thing traditional grip.
I love hearing this stuff. I mean, I had no idea.
Yeah, no,
that's
and
incredible.
Ted was, of course, amazing because he was fully qualified on pitched and unpitched. So, but yeah, he was a complete match grip proponent.
Did you grow up in New York?
I was born outside of New York, and then I grew up in Florida and California.
So I'm wondering how you ended up studying with him in New York if you weren't living there.
Well, I didn't study with him in New York. I studied with him in Florida.
Okay.
I was a young guy coming up, 1974. I befriended a local band leader. His drummer had to leave the gig, and the leader sent me off to study with that guy. And it was a guy named Hoot Gibson, who otherwise known as Al Rudkin in his real life, and he was the drummer for the Revlons. He was one of the first white drummers to record at Motown. And he got me in with Ted, who was right around the corner in the Brown Building in Clearwater, Florida. And he called Ted up personally and said, "Here, take this guy on. I know you're not taking anybody, but he's got potential." And 3 years later, I came out of there and I could actually do something.
Let me ask you something. Did he apply his book to the drum set, or was it all just he had you read it the way it was written?
Oh no! It was on the pad, then on the snare, then on the kit, and then all the way around, inside out, left hand, right hand, feet, everything. It was, and then when you got done with all of that stuff and all his, then he'd put you on stick control and Chapin books. And that took up 3 years.
Yeah, of course. Did he do that thing that a lot of people teach out of? I stayed with Alan Dawson, and so did he do the page 37 to 44 over and over again, or did he just? No.
We went through the book and he'd say, pick a thing. What are you having trouble with? Or here, try this. You're having trouble with fast tempos? Let's do this at 240. You having trouble with slow tempos? Let's do this at 64. And do it that way. And by the way, my buddy Al studied with Alan Dawson, so he knew that side of the equation as well. I never had the chance to meet him, unfortunately. But anyway, back to the Ringo thing. My question for you guys is, what do you find is the hardest Ringo groove to pull off consistently of all the tunes he's recorded? What's the hardest for you guys to pull off? The groove-wise, not Phil. I appreciate the something story, but what about the grooves?
Well, for me, it's not hard now, but it was first I was like, what? To make it really swing right and feel good, it was he did this groove in 2 songs. I can't remember the names.
Taking a ride? Like taking a ride?
In my life, yeah.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
It's in my life, right?
Okay.
and he did it in one of those. The reason why that was tricky for me at first, because you used to playing the hi hat, eighth notes, accented eighth, or straight eighths, whatever. This is not. It was like, I don't know why he ever came up with it. It was the coolest beat. It'd be like, it was cross stick, 1, 2, and then the hi hat on the end of 3. I mean, to get everything placed is such a simple beat, but to be done right, not so simple.
Yeah, he also did a very cool thing. I don't know if you ever saw that little Dave Stewart clip on YouTube where he takes 10 minutes to show how he did several of his grooves for Dave.
No,
it's pretty wild.
Awesome.
Yeah, and he just plays it. You get to watch like Ticket to Ride and the Come Together groove and all that kind of stuff. And he actually, here's how I came about with this groove, and starts playing it, and it's like so obvious, but you'd have to be left-handed British and Ringo to think about it,
Yeah. Well,
amazing stuff.
What about for you? What groove was it for you that was the challenge?
I would say Ticket to Ride was one of them. Actually, some of his earlier stuff I found a little tricky because, he goes back and forth with real fluidity ahead and behind the beat. And the sloshing hi-hat thing, I had to see him do that on the video because, of course, there wasn't a lot of video early on. There was just stills. And when you see the video of him sloshing the hats, it's like, oh, that's the secret,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
you see, plus for the longest time, as you probably noticed, his left hand cymbal was a larger ride crash, if you would, than his right hand crash ride, and so he'd ride on the left side, and being a lefty, playing a right-handed kid, it's a real interesting juxtaposition.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's all finesse stuff. I remember hearing a Tom Petty song many, many years ago, of course, very well known now, Don't Back Down, and I'm going, hey, wait a second.
Right.
That's not Stan Lynch. That's not somebody else. Who is that? And then the video comes out, and it's Ringo playing with Tom Petty. It's like, oh, I get it. This is so cool, And it's just little finesse things, playing behind the beat and doing the old blues snare and floor tom fills on the eighth notes and stuff. But it's just magic, He was able to create a vibe to everything.
A song that I love is called Dear Prudence. I love the whole feel of the whole Dear Prudence song, how it goes around and the drums go around the set. I like that song. When you play something like Revolution, that's like Revolution. That's not an easy beat to even do, even with your foot, So I think stuff like that is what really makes, Ringo special to me,
Yeah. Well, of course.
Yeah, and some of the stuff he did, I'm sure it's mostly all feel-based, intuitive, but it was so amazing for the time that he was able to play ahead of the beat, behind the beat, around the beat. He was able to facilitate Lennon, McCartney, and George Harrison, et cetera, to do these amazingly fat grooves that got them to write songs. I mean, even Get Back today on the snare drum, Get Back is such a classic groove. And it's just dun, 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 but it's so solid and it's so pocketed that, it's almost unduplicatable.
Be curious. I would love to be a fly on the wall because I've been in this situation many, many times. I mean, for starters, with Mellencamp, what came first, the beat or the acoustic guitar or the bass? You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
And with Mellencamp, a lot of times, it always was he'd play a song on acoustic guitar, which and he admitted it. I write the same song, and I go like, no kid. But but the pressure was on me to come up with something simple that was creative, that would then and it would usually motivate him to tell other people what to do or motivate somebody else. It was always that was my biggest concern and fear all the time working with John, because he was not laid back about it at all. He wanted an answer in like 2 passes, you know.
Yeah.
You know, and so I'm
Into the gut.
curious if maybe Paul or John plays a song, I could picture them playing it on a guitar, obviously, and then Ringo would come up with something creative, and then that would be like on Ticket to Ride. Oh my God, you know, they'd start singing, and all of a sudden he'd do that, and they'd go, oh my God, this is great. Why don't we do this? Why don't we do that? That kind of thing. Because, yeah, I mean, you know, the beat does definitely lay down the foundation. You know, the whole blueprint of what the song is about.
Yeah. Right.
Really
I also
wonder.
found out something else, another interesting tidbit from a good friend of mine in Northern California who used to be one of Phil Spector's Gophers and knew Harry Nilsson and John Lennon and Ringo really well. And that was that on most of those sessions, except for the very earliest Beatles sessions, the bass was added last.
Yeah,
after everybody had recorded.
Yeah.
McCartney didn't record bass along with the rhythm track. He recorded it afterwards so they could maintain some bass punch and fidelity with that 4-track recording technology. And so basically Ringo had to carry the bottom end of the band, you know, and McCartney would be playing traditional electric or acoustic guitar or whatever, and they'd add the bass later to maintain some semblance of bottom end. And that probably forced him to play a different way.
I love the old Beatles.
Of course. At the very least, he wouldn't be influenced by an extremely creative musician, Paul McCartney. You know, playing bass.
And that's how McCartney was able to work with George Martin and lay down some of those incredibly amazing and melodic bass passages.
Yeah.
Because he could put them on afterwards.
I love the old recordings, guys. We are live 646-787-8027 on this Ringo Starr night. I love the old recordings, guys. Yesterday I was in the car with my girlfriend, and I told her, I'm going to pan the song for you. She's like, what does panning mean? I put the left speaker on, and all you heard was Ringo drums. And in the right speaker, you couldn't hear Ringo's drums. It's called panning. I love the way they recorded back then. You know, even later on, bands like Van Halen did it. But a lot of Beatles songs, you could play the left speaker, and all you hear is drums. You know.
Well, that's why the purists still maintain that the mono versions are the best because they don't have stereo added later on. I remember hearing like Disraeli Gears by Cream and stuff, and even Fresh Cream, where the drums, like Ginger Baker, was on one side and the band was on the other. You know, and they panned the vocals and stuff.
I just had this conversation with somebody. Somebody told me they did it that way because it was just a new. Wasn't because the band's asked to do it. It was this new thing.
It sounds nice too.
Well, got this thing called stereo. Watch this.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Exactly. It was a fad. You know, I remember my first albums I ever bought, my first half a dozen albums. They were all available in a record store in mono and for $1 more in stereo.
Yeah.
You had a choice of buying both of those in the mid '60s, you know, and it just made it for a whole different experience. You know, of course, they recorded all those great old orchestras and the Sinatra stuff and bassy stuff and all that with MS miking, with a mono down the middle, you know, radio friendly mix.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, Bob, I can't thank you for the phone call. It's been great. Myself and Kenny talking to you. You're a friend of the show. You always help me out. Thank you so much, and hopefully you'll call back again, brother.
My pleasure. Thanks for taking the call, and I look forward to more and more of the Around the Kits. Great show, Joe. Keep it up. Kenny, take good care. We'll talk soon, and best to all the other guys, and I'll be listening.
Awesome.
Bye for now.
Thanks. Guys, let me call my first guest tonight. I'm calling him right now. I know Kenny's friends with him. He's actually the drummer for Ringo Starr as we speak. Let me just see if I can get this call one more time.
No,
Kenny,
I can drive up, knock on his door.
You could. You probably could. In 1 second.
I can probably. They'll take a half hour, but I could go up there.
Guys, we are live with the great Kenny Arnoff and myself, just talking drums and honoring the great Ringo Starr. Let's call Greg again. Let's see if we get Greg on the line. Here he is. 1 second, Kenny.
Look, I told you I don't want the LA Times. I canceled the delivery. I don't need the door delivery service. So please quit calling my number.
Sorry, I'm sorry, sir. But how about if I told you I had Kenny Arnoff on the line? Would that help out?
Only if he delivers my LA Times to me.
Guys,
Kenny, how are you? Joe, how are you?
If I can, I got to do the proper introduction. Guys, one of the most influential drummers the last 35 years, and that's no bullshit. The guy can play any genre. One of the most loved guys in the business. It gives me great pleasure to welcome back to Around the Kid the phenomenal and the beautiful person we call Greg Bissonette. Greg, Joe Gaines, and Kenny Arnoff. What's up, brother?
I'm one of the world's drummers, that's for sure. One of the world's drummers.
That's right.
But that guy you got on the other end there, he's one of my favorite drummers. Kenny, how are you?
I'm good, Greg. I'm really good. It's crazy that I have to be on a radio station, to hear your voice. But, we're always also busy. How's your son doing?
Well,
I like that kid.
Thank you. Noah is doing great. He's rocking his sophomore year at Pepperdine as a finance major, and my daughter Mary's doing great. She's rocking her junior year at Westlake High, and we're not hanging at Casa Vega. We got to go to get some Mex food at Casa Vega, Kenny.
Well, when your son gets his finance degree, he'll be taking us out to dinner.
You better believe it, baby.
Dude,
you better believe it.
That kid's a good-looking kid, man. He's got no problems dating girls.
Thank you, brother. Both my kids are doing really well, and they're just the light of my life. And how's your family?
Good. My son, he called me up we were talking the other day, and he goes, I finally became an Aronoff. You see, I'll tell you why. Working 40 hours a week, paying for his master's degree in psychology, and doing 20 more hours he's adding as working in hospitals, mental hospitals to get, the internship going. I'm like, and he's looking down the road to get his doctorate. I'm like, dude, that is Aronoff style.
Kenny, that is Aronoff style. We're going to need both of them. We're going to need financial help, and we're going to need psychiatric help. So.
Yeah, I know. No, Greg, we're perfect.
Come on.
Well, guys,
come on.
Joe, how are you? Joe, forget about drums. How's the family?
Everybody's great. My daughter is great. She's 10 years old, and she's doing great. But we are talking drums with Kenny Arnoff and Greg Bissonette. Greg, tonight is all about somebody you know very well. I think, you played drums for him, Richard Starkey, Ringo Starr. We had so many people come on the show so far. You're with him every gig, every meeting. I want to know about the person we call Ringo Starr, besides the drummer. We're always talking about Ringo and his influences. I want to know about you. What first attracted you to Ringo? And behind the scenes, what kind of man are we talking about?
Thank you, Joe. We are talking about a great man. Kenny knows as well. He's just a great man, and Kenny and I are both just so honored to have gotten to play double drums with him and hang out. The thing that I love so much is that when you're in his band and he's your friend, he loves you and he wants to help you with everything. He'll see one of the All-Star Band members eating something, and he'll say, why are you eating that? And then they'll look at the bar. Well, this is a Cliff bar. Yeah, so why are you eating it? It's like 24 grams of sugar. Well, I thought it was healthy. It's a Cliff bar. Well, if you're that guy hanging on the cliff and you're working out like that, maybe. But, so he really cares about you. When I first got in his band, he just really helped me so much with, he's a serious workout guy. Yeah. He's a serious guy with what he eats. And he just cares about his friends. And so he's a really super loving guy. He's a super caring guy. And I'm just honored to call him my friend. And, if you would have told me when I was 7 years old and our dad, Bud Bissonette, took my brother and I, and my sister was too young, but my parents both loved the Beatles, and that my dad got tickets, and he took us to see the Beatles, and we just played there. We played in Detroit, and my high school friends came out, and before the show, I mentioned to him, I said, Ringo, 50 years ago, I saw you guys a couple of blocks from here at Olympia Hockey Arena where the Red Wings played hockey with Gordie Howe, and he said, is that where that was? And I said, yeah. Well, I had a sepia picture on my phone of my dad and Gene Krupa that I had showed him the day before. He goes, so who do you like better, me or the guy in the sepia picture? Krupa, right? And I said, well, Ringo, you, of course. I said, my dad was the Krupa generation, and I love Gene, but I'm the Ringo generation. You are the greatest. He says, I am the greatest. You know, we laugh, right? But we play the first song of the show, Matchbox, and all these friends of mine are out in the crowd, and high school friends and relatives, and he stops the band and he says, so I was talking to my friend on the other kit before the show, and he told me that when he was 7, he was taken to see a band not far from here. He was taken to see a band, and I was in that band. That's because he's from here, and he introduces me. I'm like, that's the kind of guy he is. And that night on the plane, I said, Ringo, you have no idea what that meant to me that you said that in front of all my friends. He goes, oh, if I knew you would have liked it, I would have said more. He's just that guy.
Well, how about this, Greg? And guys, we are on a line with 2 Hall of Fame drummers. I get the privilege every week to talk to 2 of the best. There's 2 of the best right here ever, Kenny Arnold and Greg Bissonette. That's no bullshit ever. You know, when you go back, Greg, now, and you listen to the drum parts, you know, as you were a kid, listen to the Beatles parts. When you listen to them now, do you have better appreciation for them, Greg?
Oh, yeah, you better believe it. For years I've been doing clinics, you know, going around the world, as Kenny and I do. We go around the world, we do clinics, and he found out that I was doing tributes to Ringo for years, and one of the first gigs I did with him, and I was in the band, he says, hey, man, you go around the world telling people how great I am, you got to be in the band. You know, I've always had a huge appreciation for. I remember asking him once, I said, how did you come up with that drum part on In My Life where you play 1 hi-hat per bar, boom, tick-tock, tick-tock, boom, boom,
yeah.
And you know what he said, Kenny? He said, well, let me think. He said, I guess I just ripped off what I did on Anna. He ripped off himself.
Right.
Anna.
That's the other song. That's
yeah,
the
Greg.
other song.
So he
Greg,
said,
Greg, you're not going to believe it. I just talked about that beat. They asked me what was one of the difficult beats to play that Ringo does. I said that song, which I said he only played on 2 songs, which was Anna and In My Life, because, you know, usually you play 8 notes on the high accented 8 notes. It keeps everything locked in. This really exposed you to keep everything really in the pocket and groovy. It's tricky,
well,
you know. Yes. It's tricky, man. It's not that easy.
Yeah, very tricky.
Hey, Kenny,
Joe, I just want to say one more quick thing. I know you only got a few minutes, but I love playing his beats, and so I start playing Tomorrow Never Knows, and Steve Lukather and Richard Page and Todd Rundgren and Greg Rowley, we all kind of join in. Well, he gets on the stage, comes out for sound check, and he walks up there and he starts playing it. And my jaw fell out because I thought he was always on the records because that tom-tom, it's so pronounced and so powerful. Yeah. And he's washing on his right hand, crash or ride, and his left hand is doing the da-da, da-da with the left. And afterwards I said, man, is that how you did it on the record? And he said, yeah, of course, I'm left-handed. I said, well, I don't have that kind of finesse to pull them both out the same volume. I did them with 2. He said, why would you do that? I said, I don't know, but now I'm going to do it with my left.
Well, Greg,
oh my God,
we had a question.
Oh my God.
We had a question about 10 minutes ago from another friend of yours, the great Daniel Glass, who you know so well. He asked a question.
I never liked Daniel Glass. I never got along with him. I just don't, you know, I'd rather, what's the other, is there another question from somebody else? No, he's a great friend, and what a historian, and what a wonderful drummer, and a great guy. Tell him don't break his leg again. No.
His question was this, you know, in '64, you know, Ringo played match grip. What's the reason for that? Do you know why?
I asked him. He said, well, I just never, you know, the funny thing is, the backstory on that is he'll see me warming up, and he'll say, why are you doing that? And I'll say, well, I'm just warming up for the show. He says, are you really going to do that on stage? And your feet going, blah, 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 blah. I said, well, I played that drum solo in Black Magic Woman. I got to be warm for that. He goes, all right. He says, you know what? He said, I never sat on the drums and played the drums. This is going to blow you guys away. He told me I never sat on the drums and played unless I was playing with other musicians. And I said, that is so incredible. He said, well, why would you? And I said, well, there's a billion kids around the world playing in the room by themselves, trying to do triple paradiddles at warp speed, covering every song on YouTube, and they're not playing with anybody. He says, it's all about playing with people. And I said, what about the left hand? He said, nobody showed me any different. It just made sense. And now we see so many guys, we won't mention their names, but switching over to match grip for rock, because traditional grip is fine if you're playing soft, but it's not a power unless you're Stuart Copeland. But look at his version of it. It's a match grip vibe, and Ringo is the guy that got me into that. Probably you too, Kenny, right?
Well, the guy who got me into it was, it was I telling these guys, somebody, I was studying classical music, and somebody said, man, you got to come see this Mahavishnu Orchestra. I went, orchestra, that's cool. And then I saw what looked like a running back for the Detroit Lions playing drum set.
Barry Sanders Cobham, right? Yeah.
Yeah, he was. I was like, where did this guy come from? And he played, it was like Birds of Fire. And he played right hand and left hand. He's match grip. I'm like, oh my God. So I went home that summer and just all I did was practice my rudiments, match grip. It was not easy. But, I was already playing mallets match and timpani match, but that wasn't that easy to switch over to match playing rudiments, because that was the problem. That was tough.
Yeah.
Right.
Great stuff.
I could
Come on, Joe. I know you got a lot of questions.
Yeah, I just, as we talk about Ringo, and we all want to compare in life. I hate comparing. It's just something I don't want to do. As looking back now, you look back to all these great parts. When you're sitting up and you're playing next to him every night, I want to know what's going through your head. From that guy who sent that tape to Maine and Ferguson. Remember that years ago? You sent the tape to them. And
thank you, Joe. Thank you.
Yes, and now you're playing with Ringo. What's going through your mind next to him, brother?
Brother, a lot of things. But the main thing, if you ask me one thing that's going through my mind from the very first time we played I Want to Be Your Man first in 2003, 14 years ago together. And the first thing, the most important thing, is that I've put on my headphones for years and played along with Ringo, with the Beatles, with the Don't Come Easy, and his feel is just, it never seems like it's pushing or pulling. It's always right, because he plays so organic with the band, and the Beatles had amazing band time. So the first thing I said to myself when I played, and he was on my right, is stare at the snare drum and never flam with it. Don't go da-da or just never flam. And we finished playing that song, and we went into the control room. We were rehearsing at the Enterprise, where the old Maurice White studios down there, off the 405. We rehearsed at the Enterprise, and so we walked into this room, and we were watching like Jeopardy or something on TV, and you could hear the playback of us rehearsing, and he looked at me and he goes, "Wow, no flams." And I said, "What?" Wow. He goes, "No, believe me, I love flams. Flams are great, but not when you're playing with another drummer." I just want to get in his pocket and his feel, and I do not take my eyes off him, and I just want, if he's gonna go for a fill, man, I am not gonna go for a fill, and he's really super sympathetic, and he always, he saw me writing down some notes on a little pad. He said, "What are you writing down?" I said, "I'm just making some notes. These guys change all around their songs from the live show." He says, "Well, man, keep writing it down and cue me, because I don't want to think about it." He said, all I ever wanted was lyric sheets so that I didn't play a fill and play over when the guys were singing something. So he likes lyric sheets.
Wow, great. Greg, I got to tell you something. I told these guys this story that when I was doing that, the anniversary of the night that changed America, the Ed Sullivan show.
Yeah.
And at rehearsal, you're gonna love this. So they had the drums way apart, which is, obviously the visual thing was more important than the sound. I mean, they had Lenny Castro like all the way over on the other side of the room
I was there. I watched you guys. I remember.
Yeah, that was ridiculous. Of course, Lenny was right there in the pocket. But anyway, Ringo, when we were rehearsing, I think I counted off boy, and he starts playing, and he starts slowing down. So I'm looking at him, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to go with him. You know, I thought, should I hold it? And I went, no. He's singing. So he wants to sing it and play it at this tempo. At the end of the rehearsal, all of a sudden Jeff Jonas comes up to me, and there was a discussion. He says, what tempo are you playing at? I said, whatever Ringo's tempo is. I mean,
yeah, man. Yeah, amen to that, right? Amen.
I said, here's the tempo that I have written down. Of course, I have a metronome. But I'm playing whatever Ringo wants to play. That's the tempo I'm playing.
Yeah, amen. Amen.
Greg,
that's
guys,
amen
the great
to that.
Greg
Yes.
Bissonette. Greg, I can't thank you enough, brother. You always give me time, and I thank you so much, man. I really mean that.
You are welcome, Joe. You are welcome, Joe. I think you're awesome. I go around the world and I tell people that drumming is not just being a great drummer. Drumming is about people skills and being a great person and lifting people up. And I can't think of another friend of mine that, in fact, my brother and I were doing a session a few years ago. He goes, hey, Kenny Aronoff's in the next room. You should bring him in. And we brought him in. And, I mean, Kenny Aronoff knows how to make people feel great because he's a great person, not just a great drummer. And a lot of kids don't get that. They don't know how to be great people. You got to have both. And, Kenny, you got both.
Thank you, Greg. So do you, buddy.
Well,
thank
Greg,
you so much.
We will talk to you soon, man. Just great stuff. Thank you, brother.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, brother.
Right.
Take care, you guys.
Buddy.
All right.
Go Dodgers.
Guys,
Go
the great Greg Bissonette, one of the best in the business. We are live, Kenny Aronoff, 646-787-8027. It gives me great pleasure to welcome back to the show a tremendous drummer, Bernie Dressel. Bernie, Joe Gansas, and Kenny Aronoff. What's up, brother?
It's a party, it sounds like. And I'm a late to the party. You guys have been started already.
You are. How are you, man?
Bernie, tell me where you are, and I'll drive and pick you up while doing the radio show.
Well, I'm in Silver Lake with the hipsters in Los Angeles.
Well, I'm right now in NoHo. I can get there in 30 minutes, but I have to do something in 30 minutes, so I can't pick you up. But I like that area.
All right.
I know where you are. I'll find you.
Guys, the great Bernie Dressel. Thank you so much, Bernie, for coming back on the show, man. It's my pleasure. Thank you for giving me some of your time tonight.
Well, it's a pleasure to be on the show and an honor to be on the show about the great Ringo. Oh, my gosh.
We just had Greg Bissonette just hung up. We go from Greg Bissonette to Bernie Dressel. You know, we have so many people, the accolades, the comments about Ringo. You know, what is it for you for Ringo?
Say that last part again. Sorry.
What is it, you know, what does Ringo mean to you, Bernie Dressel?
Oh, I mean, him and the band, the Beatles, mean everything to me. It's a common story, but I'll tell mine, which mirrors a lot of people's story, seeing them on Ed Sullivan.
Sure.
Except at that moment, I'm 55 now, so I'm 2 years old when they're on Ed Sullivan.
No.
And it's a big deal. My grandmother had bought me Meet the Beatles, and I don't remember the timeline if I got the record before or after Sullivan, but I'm 2 years old, and I see them on Ed Sullivan, and just the euphoric reaction to them from the crowd, and television, black and white television, makes a big mark on a child when they look at it. It's powerful. It's powerful to everybody. And to see the happiness and how great they sounded and how much fun they looked like they were having. And obviously, I hadn't seen many musicians at 2 years old. I could tell they were good. Yeah. And Ringo was good, So, along with Ringo himself, it's just the whole band is, it's just phenomenon still to this day, that the mark they made on the world and how everything changed.
Bernie, before I forget, brother, congratulations on your wedding. Your wife is beautiful. God bless, brother.
Oh, thank you. Yes, we got back from Italy a couple weeks ago. We had a nice lengthy honeymoon, and thank you very much. Yeah, I was a single guy when I talked to you last.
Yeah, great stuff. What a great drummer.
Congratulations.
But let me tell you, the first month of the marriage, I didn't take the garbage out one time. So it's going really well. Now we were gone most of that time, so I had an excuse.
Bernie, where'd you go in Italy?
Oh gosh, we were there for 3 weeks, and we started in Milan, went to Lake Como, over to Venice. We went down to Bologna, which was our best meal of the whole time, where we did the cooking club.
I've been there.
You know what?
Yeah.
You know what's so funny, guys? You guys have so much in common. You both are big players on Straight No Chaser. I don't know if Kenny has Kenny heard your version of that? Kenny, have you heard Bernie's version of Straight No Chaser?
No, I haven't. I'm gonna check it out. It's on YouTube?
It's fucking phenomenal. It is. The drums sound tremendous. It's tremendous. But I know Kenny. I don't know if Bernie knows. Kenny did it on the Burn It for Buddy tribute years ago, and recently did it this year, right, Kenny?
Well, I played it with I couldn't believe it. I got asked to play it with the Buddy Rich Big Band in town here, and I mean, you know, at this point, I've been playing it ever since, so I feel very comfortable. I think I freaked everybody out. I think I freaked the band out because I played it wicked fast.
I'm going to send you Bernie's version. It's tremendous.
Now, Kenny, I was there for that. I was in the audience watching you.
Oh, dude. Did you think that? Oh, wait, that's right. You were there? Maybe you were. Dude,
yeah,
you know
well,
what, you know what's weird about that? I was so far back, I couldn't hear the saxes. And that was a drag. I don't know why they put the drums back with the trumpets. I couldn't hear the sax line. It was so difficult.
You're preaching to the choir about. I mean, I obviously, you know, I do a lot of big band, but the drums need to be in the row with the trombones, not back with the trumpets. So you're equidistant, and you have a chance of hearing the saxes, so they're not so far away.
Yeah, they didn't put it in the monitors. I was like, this is ridiculous.
Hey, Bernie.
I think those guys were pissed at me because they, you know, the New York, when I recorded with the New York guys, they're all about, come on, let's kick ass, you know, when I played live with them back then and I was crapping my pants doing that, they were all about, go on top, go, push. But these guys, they look at me like, don't play, can you slow it down? I'm like, well, okay. When I got up there, I went, you know, I thought, this is what it feels good, you know, ding, 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 and then I think, I want these guys are not going to want to play it this fast. But you know what? Come on, read. Did it seem like it was blazing fast, or did it just seem up tempo and kick ass?
It didn't seem. No, it seemed like the right tempo. I think what you're saying is the difference between New York and L.A. Because sometimes I'll play with an L.A. big band if I'm sitting in with them. And they go, go ahead, kick it off, Bernie. And I kick it off at 290 beats per minute, which is where Buddy would play, you know, Straight No Chaser or Wind Machine or Time Check. That's the tempo. And they're not used to playing that. You know, we have palm trees here. We have pools. So we don't want fast tempos.
I think that's what I thought, Bernie. That's exactly what I thought. It's the difference between New York and L.A., you know?
Yeah. But I have my own big band called the BBB featuring Bernie Dressel, and we play those tempos. And when you're the leader, they'll do it.
Well, Bernie,
they have to.
Have you got the chance to ever meet Ringo at all, Bernie?
You know, I got to play with Ringo one time.
Nice.
And I played Act Naturally with him. And it was on a television show that was a pilot in the U.S. called The Dame Edna Show. Okay. Now, The Dame Edna Show was, I think, on the air a long time in England, and he's from Australia. And he's a purple-haired, cross-dressing comedian that talks like this. And
oh, my gosh.
that show didn't quite go over in the U.S., but they did a few pilots, and I was on them, and Ringo was a guest. They'd have different celebrity guests, and we did Act Naturally, where Ringo sang, I played drums, complete with a tap dancing child that had purple hair also during the song. You know, it's a comedy show. So I did get to play with Ringo, but it was short and sweet. Didn't get to speak with him. And he showed up just in time for the show. What year was this? 1996, I think. It was right after Carson just went off the air.
Okay.
And it was in their old studio or right next to it at NBC.
Right.
And so I did play with him one time, yeah.
Cool stuff. Guys, the great Bernie Dressel and Kenny Arnold. 646-787-8027. Got another 5 minutes with Bernie. You know, Bernie, as we look back now, and as we're older now, I'm approaching 50. You guys are a little older than me. When I hear these drum parts now, it's just something that makes me smile. You know, all these great Beatles songs, and you hear the production is not overproduced, and you hear how they recorded. We talked before about the stereo, the mono, the panning, the different speakers. I showed my girlfriend today, and the left speaker was just Ringo, and the right speaker was just the music. When I hear all these songs now, you know, it brings back a lot of memories. How about you, Bernie Dressel? You know, when you hear these songs now, does it bring a smile to your face like you were back a kid again?
Oh yeah, I have Sirius XM, the Beatles channel, on all the time now. Almost I have to go, man, I really have to change the channel and hear something else. But no, it's what I gravitate to. That's my upbringing. But I do want to say this. A lot of, a story that just comes to mind. A lot of people, when you mention Ringo's name, like non-musicians, I'd say non-musicians, they'll say to me, if Ringo's name comes up, now, was Ringo good? That's a common question.
Right.
And they want to know.
Yeah.
And what I think, and I say, well, if you read the Jeff Emmerich book, or you hear Jeff Emmerich talk about Ringo, one of the things he says, Jeff Emmerich being the one of the great engineers of the Beatles for a few years, he said, name me one song where Ringo or where the drums sound wrong. Like you just go, oh, too bad about that drum part.
Right.
Yeah,
that
right.
really ruined it. And you can't name a song because all the songs, the drum parts, whether Ringo created them or he was told to play something, which happens, Kenny and I, we work with a producer, we'll be suggested a part sometimes or we'll come up with it. But, any of the song, it's just perfect. The feel is right. The part is right. It serves the music. The lopey feel is very Ringo. I mean, it sounds like him. You go, that's Ringo. It's not a generic sound, too. And it's perfect for the song. And so that's the one thing that, I think says it all really about Ringo. It's not like, is he better than Buddy Rich or is Buddy Rich better than him? It's apples and oranges with different styles of music. But in the band that Ringo played in, he's perfect.
Yeah.
Great stuff.
And
great stuff, guys.
I like listening to that because it inspires me to play for the music. And no matter what my chops abilities are or what I think would show me off, I always want to look towards the sound of the drums and the feel and the part. And that's my upbringing hearing Ringo do that. I love them.
Yeah, you're trying to be authentic no matter what you do.
Well, that's right. That's
and,
right.
I used to, I won't mention drummers. I know some great drummers, and they, no matter who they play with, they're always going to sound. They only know one approach, one style.
Right.
I was pointing out to a real famous drummer once. I was doing a Kennedy Center honors, and the first segment was honoring the Who. The second segment was honoring George Jones. So you can imagine. So I was trying to say to this guy, I said, check this out. I said, Keith Moon, I'm going to be beating the crap out of drums, all on top of the beat, slamming the beater and hitting everything hard, bass crash. George Jones, beater comes off the bass drum. You don't hear any rim shots on the snare center of the drum, and hi-hat very quiet. The drummer in George Jones is just keeping time for people. You got the upright bass or the electric bass has to be heard, not the kick drum, all this stuff. And the drummer went, wow, that's amazing. But it's about being authentic. And I know you're that kind of drummer, where you serve, it's what's correct for that style of music.
Yeah. Yeah, and I play plenty of live gigs, but I'm really for me, I have to be a chameleon when I'm playing like Family Guy or Simpsons or Star Wars or Zootopia, the movies, or War of the Planet of the Apes. There's different, each movie they're trying to get a different sound, or each show, or they might have different things happening for the movie at different areas where I need to sound different. So it is interesting because, again, show about Ringo. Ringo has a sound.
Yeah.
And you go, that is Ringo. And when you play a lot of styles like Kenny and I do, it's an interesting question is, do we have a sound? That's our sound when we are able to be a chameleon so much. So, I think of Kenny as, one of the great rock drummers of our time that laying down a straight A rock and groove. And, some people think of me as jazz guy or big band because they've heard me with Brian Setzer or Gordon Goodwin or my big band, the BBB. But so when I put a band together, I go, oh my gosh, do I really want to do this? And put myself out there as that's my sound. It's interesting because I'm considering, with my big band, the BBB, we've done one record and we did a live album, which is pretty rare these days. But I'm going to do a studio album next time, and I'm seriously considering, will I be going some different directions, putting tea towels on the toms, go away from the big band sound and try to blend all the things that I can do, or is that taking it too far, and confusing my sound or whatever? But it is who I am.
I'm sure.
You know what you should do on the next record? Hell with the drums, man. Just be the lead singer.
Well, I threaten to do that.
I'm sure.
If people start talking while we're playing, I'll threaten to sing.
I just want to say thank you for Bernie for calling up. It's always a pleasure. One of the best. Bernie, thank you so much, man, for giving me some of your time tonight. It's an honor, as you always.
All right, and this is great timing because I finally, after 50 years, got my first Ludwig kit last week.
Nice. Beautiful. From
1967 Blue Sparkle. The Ringo drums are out of the price range for something that I probably wouldn't be playing much in public. So, but I did finally get that Ringo Ludwig 60s shell.
Sure, brother. We appreciate the time, as always. Guys, the great Bernie Dressel. Thank you so much, man. It's always
Take care,
an honor.
Bernie. Bye,
All
Bernie.
right. All right, Joe. All right, Kenny.
Thanks so much.
Later.
Guys, great.
Okay.
Let's keep going, guys. We got another caller before Kenny gets out of here. The great Gary Astridge. Gary, Joe Gansas, and Kenny Arnoff. How are you, Gary?
Joe, Kenny, hello. I feel like I am at a phone party.
You
it's
are.
a great night.
It is a phone party.
Yeah, definitely am.
Gary,
hey, you know what,
where are
Bernie? I'm in the Buffalo, New York area.
All right.
Yeah.
We got
cool.
Buffalo, Jersey, and L.A.
Cool. We
There
got nice. Gary. Gary's. Well, tell me everything about your time with Ringo and everything. Everything Ringo that comes to mind for you.
Oh my God, we'd be on the phone for 3 hours. But in short, for me, I feel like a blessed guy because I had the same beginnings as everyone else has been saying. For the most part, like you, Kenny. Seeing the Beatles firsthand on the Ed Sullivan Show changed my life. And just to talk a little bit about me and a lot about Ringo and his kits. Here's my cool adventure. I because of Ringo learned to play the drums. and at one point I decided I wanted a Ludwig Oyster Black Pearl Beatles kit, and that decision actually spurred a passion and a hobby, and I ended up over decades amassing a collection of vintage drums, cymbals, and gear, all specific to what Ringo used. And I created a website called ringosbeatlekits.com to share a lot of my information that I knew was all factual. And in the end of 2012, I get a phone call saying, hey, this is confidential, but Ringo just signed a contract with the Grammy Museum in L.A., and we're doing an exhibit on his life, and he's loaning us his Ed Sullivan kit and his Maple kit. And we're running. And they said we're running into a problem. Nothing's organized. We can't make sense of anything. We're frantically Googling, and all we keep finding is your website. Can you help us? So that was the key that opened the door for me to go in. And the short story is that of the 5 of 6 drum kits that Ringo played during his career, I, along with Jeff Jonas, who Kenny, I think, related to, Ringo's drum tech, and Scott Ritchie, Ringo and Barbara's personal assistant. We worked as a team, and they just kind of kicked open the door and said, whatever you need to do, do it. So I ended up bringing 5 of Ringo's Beatle kits back to life.
Nice.
Wow. Great story.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So the cool part, I'm, being the curator, was honored to be able to set them up, such as, Ringo's kit over at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But the best part, being a drummer, is being the guy that actually handled the kit, documented them, and really got to
Gary,
get.
If I can, what's the wood back then? What were the drums made of?
Oh, okay. Yeah, they were 3-ply. They were mahogany, poplar mahogany.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Very thin.
Yeah.
And
wow.
And what's cool though is, and even his Maple kit, very thin shells, and it's just amazing.
Yeah.
So what's cool? What's cool is when you see the actual drum heads. He never changes drum heads unless he broke one. And they're it's just amazing just to see all the little details. There was even a one of his toms. I took the head off, and it was like, are you serious? Inside the tom was a business card held on by a washer, and and it was from an employee named Dave Golding, who worked at Drum City in London. So I actually called him and tracked him down. He's still alive. And in fact, I'm doing a talk next month at the UK Drum Show in Manchester, and I called Dave and I said, I got to meet you. So his son is taking Dave up to visit me. So it's going to be a remarkable time. Yeah.
That's great. That is so cool.
Great stuff.
That's great. Those are good stories. I've never heard any of these stories. These are great.
Well, one thing that was cool is it was 2012, 2013 when I first started. And it was 2015, if you recall, Ringo sold his first Ludwig kit at auction.
Mm-hmm.
And it sold in December of 2015.
Is that the one that my buddy from the Indianapolis Colts bought? I know that Jim Irsay.
Jim Irsay. Yeah,
I'm good.
$2.1 million.
Yep, I'm very good friends with him because I lived in Indiana. I'm, very big. Real close with him. With family and friends kind of thing. I remember he texted me. He says, "Guess what I just bought?" That's it. There it is. That's funny.
Yeah. And the month before, he bought the Ed Sullivan drum head for $2 million.
Yeah, I know. Well, when you own an NFL football team, you can afford this stuff.
Sure.
Yeah. So, it was nice. It was last year, I think in November, I got a phone call from Chris McKinney, that's Jim's a memorabilia curator. So he actually invited me to Jim's office to check out the kit and the rest of the memorabilia.
Awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome. That's fantastic.
Gary, and years ago, did you play a lot of Beatles songs early on? Did you learn a lot of his
still
stuff?
do.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, in fact, I still do it. And Kenny and Joe, I think you'll agree. I'm in a Beatles band back home. We do Beatles and 60s. And growing up with them, many times if we decide, like, hey, let's do, Mr. Postman, it's like, yeah, okay. And then in my head, I'm thinking, man, I grew up with that song. I know it. So maybe like 2 nights before we go to rehearse, I'll start listening to the song, and it's like, oh, my God, this is so much different than I remember it.
Right.
And it's just amazing. He's just an amazing guy. And one quick story for me, Kenny and Joe.
Yes.
It's whenever I'm around Ringo, I find that as a person, I'm not starstruck, but because of who he is and how I feel towards him, my whole body goes on high def. I take in every word, every hand gesture, everything that he does. And I had the luxury, but the last time we were doing a promo video and photography shoot, and I was there the last time he played the kit that Jim Irsay bought. So it was like 52 years later, here's Ringo for the last time playing his Beatle kit, his first Ludwig kit.
Wow.
But there was something magical to stand there and unexpectedly see him pick up a pair of drumsticks and just start to play.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just magical and very emotional too.
Yeah, very magical. I agree. It's everything that you saw and heard when you were a kid. There it is, right there.
Yeah, one thing that's interesting is you could take a song and give it to a good guitar player, and say, here's a guitar, can you play this? And you could have that one person who just has that gift where it just comes from the soul, and that whole song takes on a whole new personality.
Yeah.
And that, to me, that's Ringo.
Yeah.
Well, Gary, I got to tell you, great stories. I can't thank you enough for calling. Before I let you go, you have any final comments about Ringo?
I just love him dearly. He's just like everything that Greg said, times 10. He's just a wonderful human being. He's been very kind to me, and I just love him dearly.
Great, guys. Gary Ashes. Gary, Kenny Arnoff, and myself, we thank you so much for calling up tonight. Thanks, Gary.
All right, take care, guys.
Thanks, Gary.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
All righty.
Joe, I'm going to have to go because I have to go to be a Q&A at a very important movie that's coming out called Sideman, about all the old blues artists, including drummers.
Kenny, I can't thank you enough, brother, as always.
Yeah, man, always. I love being on your show. And everybody listening, you'll hear me again soon, I'm sure.
Thanks, brother. Have a great night. Guys, the great Kenny Arnoff, as always. Thanks, brother.
Take care, you guys. Love you. Bye. Bye.
Guys, real life 646-787-8027. Kenny Arnoff, how to go. We got some great drummers coming up. I want to do wanted to play a little promo for Kenny, but that didn't come up too good. I played it behind the kids. All right, we got some great drummers on the line. It gives me great pleasure to welcome back to the show the great Carl Latham. Carl Joe Kansas on Around the Kit. What's up, brother?
Gentlemen, how's it going?
We just had Kenny Arnoff. He had to go. He had to go to a special meeting, but that's okay. We have Carl Latham. Carl, how you doing, brother?
I'm good, man. I'm listening. I'm going, why am I on this show? I mean, I studied with Gary Chester, and I teach Joe Russo's nephew, and I know Kenny's friends with Joe. And basically, I like food from Bologna, I'm listening to all these other great guys and going, oh, my God, thank you for having me.
But you're a drummer. You're a drummer. That's what counts.
Yeah, I'm a drummer. Right, left.
I know you played a lot of Ringo stuff, and I played on my show a day trip of, your version. But, take me back to, years ago when we heard of the Beatles, was it Ed Sullivan's show for you? I mean, as the same story goes on, take me back.
Yeah, it's crazy, because I'm the youngest of 4 kids, and my older brother, who is also a Rick Latham, but not the Rick Latham.
Right.
He was playing drums since before I was born, and the first stuff I heard was all Beatles. I started playing when I was 4 or 5, and this is like all the stuff I heard. It was just incredible.
Take me back, to the style. When you first heard Ringo, what you thought.
Well, when I first heard Ringo, I thought, wow, what is this about? When I was young, I just heard, how intense the groove was and the power, of his early playing. And as I grew and listened to more of the music, I totally agree with like Daniel Glass and these guys. I'm a huge fan of all of his crafting of the parts, and he's just a total genius. I was listening to the music for the last week or so, listening for the show, and it's one of those things when I hear him play, he's one of the drummers where I go like, oh my God, like I'm just starting to learn how to play drums. It's amazing. His the way he crafts parts, and I just think he's totally genius and completely creative, and the groove. It's just like the groove is so deep and so amazing.
Absolutely, guys. The great Carl Latham, 646-787-8027. Later on, you've been doing some stuff. Tell me about all the recordings you've been doing of the Beatles.
Well, yeah. Over the last few years, I play with a great sax player, Don Braden, and we have a group I co-lead with him called Big Funk. And I don't know if everybody would know Don. He played with Tony Williams, and he played with Wynton Marsalis and a bunch of other guys. Great tenor player. And we have like a funk band. It's mostly Miles Davis influenced and Grover Washington and Sly and stuff like this. And I brought in Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds to one of our first rehearsals,
Mm-hmm.
And all the other guys in the band turned around to me and said, what are you thinking about? I said, we got to give this a go, man.
Yeah.
So we covered Lucy, and in the last few years, I play often with Mark Egan, and right. We have a group that we used to co-lead. We co-lead a couple groups, and in this last group, I call it Living Standards, and it's my concept of playing all the music that resonated with me, when I was a kid, and trying to not reinvent, but just take a look at that music. And on the last CD, we did a lot of Beatles. We did Tomorrow Never Knows, Taxman.
Nice.
What else? And Day Tripper. Yeah. Exactly.
Yes, Day Tripper. Carl,
and
I got a phone call here. Let me see if we get this phone call on. Hey, you're on the line, 310 area code 310. How you doing?
Fine. This is Jim calling from Los Angeles. Great show tonight.
Thanks, Jim. Kenny Otto had to leave. You're on the line with myself and the great Carl Latham. How are you, Jim?
Oh, doing great. I've really been enjoying this. It's funny that I've actually met all of your guests so far, with the exception of Carl.
Okay.
I'm in the L.A. area, so I've met Kenny a few times, as well as Greg. But I had a quick comment about Gary Astor, if that's okay. Is that
yes.
All right?
Sure. He just left us.
Yeah,
yes.
So many people try to put together the correct Ringo kit, and they a lot of times buy wrong parts or wrong colors and everything like that. Gary has done so much research all through the years, and that website is just amazing because you can get every single correct part number and size, and no matter what kind of books and video you have, Ringo never had an oyster blue kit like so many people think he had. And Gary has just done it. So people need to check out that website. You can learn a lot from him.
Great. Did you have a question for Carl about Ringo at all?
No, I really didn't.
Okay, that's fine. Listen, Jim, I appreciate the phone call. Thanks so much. I'll put you on hold. Thanks, brother.
Okay, have a great night, guys.
Guys, we are live 646-787-8027 with Carl Latham, a friend of the show. I had him on. We had a great interview last year. We go through life, Carl, and we want to say, what has this drummer done in his career that has made a difference? And we can name guys like Buddy and John Bonham, but I got to tell you, I'm up to like almost 230 drummers on my show, and the most widely name on my show is Ringo. Why do you think that is the case, Carl? I have heavy metal guys. I have big band guys, country guys. Everybody loves Ringo. Why?
I think it's what everyone else has been saying. I when I was researching for tonight, I tried to make a list of my favorite 4 or 5 Ringo tracks, And just everything he did is perfect, like was Kenny maybe saying how he plays the architecture of the song just perfectly. Everything he does is perfect. He just plays genius parts. It fits. The things he plays together with Paul are just amazing. It's I don't know. I think he's one of the most creative, and greatest drummers of our time.
Absolutely, yeah. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Yeah, no, I put him in the same, like Jack DeJohnette is one of my favorite drummers. I see him in the same light, even though the drumming is unrelated. That deep creativity within the song, within the music.
Yeah, you know what's sad about the music sometimes, and people and their opinions, and I have to respect them all. But so many times we want the drummer to really stand out, and I get that. We want to hear guys like Bonham and Neil Peart and Carl Palmer. We want to hear them be the focus. And then when we mention Ringo, I think he gets a bad rap sometimes. Oh, he's okay. Ringo is he good? Talk to me about the songwriting and those drumming, because to me those drum parts are songwriting.
They're amazing. It's just complete genius. Yeah, that's. I mean, how can you say Ringo doesn't stand out?
Right.
You listen to any Beatles song I listen to, anything. If you think of any song, if you think of the amazing groove he plays in the beginning of I Want You, and then that deep 12/8 or anything, just any of the parts, just any song. Think of. It's amazing. I don't know how to describe it.
Have you had the chance to meet him at all ever?
No, I never met Ringo so far. I'm hoping that's something that will happen in this lifetime.
Right. Have you seen his band now with Greg Bissonette at all?
I haven't. No, I knew a bass player that played in that band for a while, but I haven't seen the band yet. And everybody I know that has worked with Ringo has just said incredible things.
I asked this question before, and I'll ask you again. When you go back now after all these years, and you hear some of these songs, even Gary Attridge just he mentioned this. He heard the song, and it's like it's different now. He had to relearn it almost. When you hear these songs now, is there different meanings to them because we're older and we appreciate things better? Do we hear things different now?
Yeah, I think it's possible. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like the parts that I'm really attracted to now are like the amazing part he plays in Something.
Yes.
There's no cymbal for a long time, and he plays the fill, and finally you get to the cymbal when the guitar plays the melody. It's just amazing.
Yeah. There's so many great parts. I just never think he gets the credit he deserves. But that's people's opinions again. I grew up in a house where my brother is a guitarist, and he's a Beatle freak. He still loves the Beatles today. So I remember playing Sgt. Pepper's and the White Album over and over, and it's just amazing how I could I hear it now. But I hear things a little different, I hear different parts in a way,
Exactly. I never knew how deep his pocket was,
Right.
I mean, I knew how creative he was, but he's swinging. I mean, it's like it's a deep pocket like any of the other great drummers, like Bonham or anybody, And he's just amazingly creative. It's like Bonham and Copeland and Peart and. He's one of those Baker and all these cats. He's one of the most creative drummers that's ever lived.
Now, when you re-recorded these songs, I know some of them are a little different arrangements. Did you try to savor some of that Ringo feel at all?
What I really thought about was developing motifs.
Mm-hmm.
Little motifs, which is what I notice is one of the things I find very attractive about Ringo's playing. Like Day Tripper, there's a little move. I play it all throughout the song, but a little twist every time, and it goes around the kit and goes up and down. And it starts on a piccolo one time, and another time it starts on the tom tom. And it's really to me like a little honoring of those amazing parts, And the guys we play with they're both Ringo fanatics, Mark Egan, the great bass player. And Vic Joris is the guitar player in the group, and we're all kind of Beatles freaked out. So it's a really nice group to play in.
Carl, do you think 55 years from now, we'll be talking about Ringo the same way?
Absolutely, sure.
Nice. Oh, yeah. Great. Absolutely. Guys, a great call, Nathan. Carl, I can't thank you enough for giving me some of your time. I'm going to have you back on the show for an interview, but I just always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much, man. And just keep doing what you're doing. Just keeping the drumming world alive.
Great. Thanks for having me, Joe, and keep it going, man. It's a great show. Thank you.
All right. Guys, a great call, Nathan. Thanks, brother.
Good night.
Great stuff. We just had some great stuff. Let me see if Matt, you still there, bro?
I've been here all night listening to you guys. You guys are saying some really nice things. I'm learning a whole lot from everybody.
Well, give me something you learned tonight that maybe you said, wow, I didn't know that.
Well, as far as Ringo being left-handed,
yeah,
I didn't know that. And the color of his drum set, I always thought it was blue oyster, but it's not. I think it's gray oyster. That is irrelevant. Who was the other gentleman that just, before Carl, he was with the big band? What was his name?
You mean the guy who's doing Bernie Dressel?
Yeah, that's who. What's his name?
Bernie Dressel. He's a great drummer. Bernie Dressel.
Where is he out of? I mean, I've heard of him. I heard a lot about him.
California.
Okay.
He's a top.
Good drummer. But I learned a lot, you know. Just listening to everybody and their attitudes in general are so nice. Everybody's so happy and friendly and comical and serious, and it's just a great community. It's just great drummers and great people and whatever. I love your show. I think that your show does a lot for the drumming community. You know, everybody every week can come. I mean, call and listen to all these great drummers. When I was growing up, and I'm not that old, Joe.
No, I know.
When I was growing up, there was no YouTube, there was no videos, there was no CDs or DVDs. It was just WNEW with the Led Zeppelin. You know.
Well, how about this? You want to stay online with me for a little while? I'll keep it online with my next call. Is that okay?
I got to go because
Okay.
Wait a minute. What do you got? What are you planning?
I got three more guys, but Kenny ain't here. But if you got to go, you got to go. I appreciate it.
Yeah, but Joe, listen, man, you're doing really great. Continued success, and just keep it going. Don't stop.
Thanks, brother.
All right, and I'll talk to you really soon.
All right, guys. The great Matt Patello. Thank you, Matt.
Good night, Joe.
Wow, what a great guy. Guy out of Jersey, he's been doing it for a long time. Great stuff. Guy, 646-787-8027. Got to do one or two spots, and then I'll be back for my next guest.
This portion of Around the Kit is sponsored by Modern Drummer Magazine, the world's #1 drum magazine.
This portion of Around the Kit is brought to you by Jamtech. Jamtech USA develops, builds, and sells some of the most innovative, robust, lightweight drum accessories in the world. Located in Chicago, Jamtech USA currently offers several product lines to choose from. Everything from drum mic mounts and stick holders to practice pads. You can visit them at jamtech.com to purchase the most original and unique drum accessories on the market. That's jamtech.com. JAMTEC.com.
The world's best acoustic drum tension rod locks are Rimshot locks. Endorsed by more A-list professional drummers than any other tension rod locking product, Rimshot locks provide drummers with the only durable long-term solution to loose tension rod detuning. Hitting hard should not mean playing out of tune. Crushing rim shots should not cause tension rods to loosen. Easy-to-use solid brass Rimshot locks are beautiful, and they will last a lifetime once installed. Snare drums, bass drums, rack and floor toms can all stay in tune. Visit rimshotlocks.com to learn more, or order Rimshot Locks at 247drums.com today. Play hard and stay in tune with Rimshot Locks.
And now back to Around the Kit with Joe Gansas.
Guys, we are back, 646-787-8027. Tremendous show so far. I got great guys that called. I got great guys on the line. Let me just talk to Doug Miola. Doug, what's up, brother?
Hey, Joe. How's it going?
Can you stick around for the next hour or so?
I got about a half an hour. I'm at
All right,
a gig.
Cool. Let me bring up my next guest. Guys, it gives me great pleasure to welcome back to the show a tremendous drummer, a great educator. He's taught some of the best in the business, the great Grant Menifee. Grant, Joe Gansas, and Doug Miola. Kenny had to go, but you got myself and Doug. What's up, Grant?
Oh, well, I guess Doug's okay, right? How you doing, Doug?
Hey, Grant. I'm doing good, man. How are you?
All right, Joe. Thanks for having me on. You know, I'll give you my best perspective from an educator.
Yeah. Well, Doug's a great educator too, up in Vancouver.
I know.
In Jersey.
I know.
Yeah, and we got both of you here. You know, talk to me about tonight's honoree, and you know what we all said. You know, add your own twist to Ringo.
Okay, well, I mean, Ringo is one of those guys that comes up in my studio almost daily, you know, because I use him as an example of, you know, I try to get these guys, I mean, they want to come in, they want to do all these chops, and they think it's going to be just this big chops factory, and then I get them to play, and then I'll say, okay, well, stop thinking about all your rules and all your limitations and that kind of thing, and just play like a musician. Play like Ringo would have played. Mm-hmm. He didn't have his boundaries and rules and that kind of thing. And he just was like a musician. He was a composer and an arranger, and that's how he approached it. And you know, he seemed like a guy that really, really wanted to contribute to that arrangement. Mm-hmm. Don't you think, Doug?
Absolutely. I mean, I agree. I mean, I have the same issue with a lot of drummers. You know, I always try to take my students where they want to go, because I know that everybody comes full circle. You know what I mean? So it's like, mm-hmm. I know the chops guys and when people are getting started, or maybe they've been playing drums for a while but they haven't taken formal lessons, and they learn how to read, they learn, you know, some of the different theory that they don't know. I tell them, I'm like, you know, if I force you to do some things that I know are going to be great for you, you're not going to want to practice because you're going to be bored. So we'll get this out of your system. Then when it comes down to playing drums, especially as a part of a band, I say, you know, 90% of the things that I practice, I don't get to use in gigs because I wouldn't have the gig. You know what I mean? It's like when I'm sitting there working on crazy 30-second note, you know, hand and foot combinations, I never get to use that stuff, you know. Mm-hmm. I have to play for the song. And like you said, you know, Ringo's, you know, one of the greatest examples of, you know, a musician playing his part in the band for the song.
But he was put in a really precarious situation. I mean, he came into this band that was ready to explode, and you know, he didn't have a lot of training, and he just, all he knew was what he heard, and he had a fantastic ear, and he did whatever he could to make that song sound the way he thought he could contribute to it. Like, for example, on, you know, guys before him were mostly R&B type players, jazz players. They played match grip. Well, those rules went out the window with him because, you know, he thought, well, it should sound like this. And he did it. You know, he played a backbeat with a downstroke and a rim shot. Those guys weren't doing that before him. You know, he was playing match grip. He was riding on the floor tom. Nobody did that. Yeah. You know. So you know, whatever it took, he did. He didn't have those rules, and that's why, you know. And I'm sure you do, Doug. Also, you know, you teach your students all these rules, and then you say, when you go to the gig, forget them. You know. And But Ringo was so talented that you know, he didn't need any rules. He didn't need any boundaries. No one, you know. So there you go.
About that a lot. Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. You know, what I tell so many drummers is, I think because we see, you know, we have the internet now, which is awesome. We have all these videos, and we have people. You know, you look at your Facebook stream. I'm sure you see. So many of your friends are drummers. You see these 30-second clips of people just shredding, and playing these incredible patterns, right?
Yeah, it bores the crap out of me.
Like, that's not the essence of the instrument. I said that's a component of the instrument, but when our brains are filled with that, and we see 20 or 30 of those videos a day blasting through our news feed, that's in people's heads. Like, I got to practice this. I got to play fast. I got to do this. I got to do this. I got to do this. And I'm like, just play the drums. Develop your style. Put a song on and just play a beat to it. Don't even try to mimic what you're hearing. Just play something and create something so you can develop yourself. Because I said, if all you're doing is regurgitating things that you've heard other people do, you'll never have your own thing, you know. And you know, I try to instill that, because that's how these drummers that we talk about, like Ringo, developed a personality. You know what I mean? And they contributed to something, their personality on their instrument. And I had mentioned something earlier on in the segment that I did with Behind the Kit. This Steve Smith quote that I read was really spot on. He said, before Ringo, all the drummers were basically assessed based on their virtuosity. You know, you had, you know, Buddy and Gene Krupa, and you had all these showmen. And Ringo came along and became an equal member of the band, contributing to the song. And he and his parts are so signature that you could hear his drumming without the music and know it's a Beatles song, right? And that's what you don't have these days. You don't have that. You could hear a song and you could guess at 12 different drummers that might be playing on it, because, you know, the way they produce records and songs nowadays, they're very stripped down, you know. So you don't have that personality, you know.
Yes. Before, guys, we're talking to the great Grant Menifee and Doug Miola, 646-787-8027. Before, if you heard Greg Bissonette told me and Kenny Arnoff that Ringo said, I never just go up to the drums and play the drums. He said, I want to play with musicians. I thought that's a great comment. He never
that was great.
Practice. Yeah, just chops. So we're talking about a guy who's, you know, the whole package here, you know, not thinking about himself. And what Doug is trying to say in all his stuff, and before, you know, it isn't always about one person in the band. Ringo was about making the song, you know, come to life, you know, guys?
Yep, right, exactly, yeah.
Hey,
course,
Doug,
you know, lots. I'm sorry,
Doug, do you think we wouldn't have had a Hal Blaine if it weren't for Ringo? You know?
Well, that's the thing, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
Sure.
You know, because I mean everything. Like I think it was Daniel Glass at the top of the show was talking about how Beatles were so influential to everyone from The Who and Hendrix to people like Hal Blaine and the Wrecking Crew. Like they were looking to bands like the Beatles to see what should we be doing next, right? Because they're catering to an audience, right? So if you're writing a theme song to a movie or a TV show, you want to get hip with what's happening with your audience, right? So they look to the Beatles for that. Yeah,
well,
absolutely.
Guys, this is my 90th show. I've interviewed, I think, 230 drummers tonight, and just forget about some of the best ever. You guys know the list. I'm not going to say it, but, you know, the one name, probably the two big names, I got to tell you, Peter Criss has been a big name on my show, John Bonham, but the one name that metal guys love, heavy metal guys, thrash drummers, country, jazz, it doesn't matter. So many of my guests, 80% of my guests, have always talked about Ringo. Why is that, Doug?
Well, I think that, like, for me, and I probably would be a great example of the wrong thing to do when you start as a drummer. When I started as a drummer, the Beatles had already happened. They were done, right? Like, as far as the big, like a lot of people say, I saw them on Ed Sullivan. I was like, oh, that's old school, right? Like I was into stuff, I want to hear double bass. I want to see the drum set catch on fire. How fast is the guy? And so to me, I saw the Beatles and Ringo as more like a celebrity, right? Like a famous personality. I didn't appreciate the musicianship of the Beatles until I got older and got all the other stuff out of my system. I'm like, oh, those guys did do some pretty cool stuff, right? So I went backwards, and when I was learning about John Bonham was a huge influence of mine. Then I studied the people that he studied, because I'm like, well, if I study the drummers where Bonham got his stuff, Krupa and Elvin Jones, I'm like, wow, like these guys are really good. And then I started to dive into that. Then I started to get into, Buddy, and then I'm like, wow, like Ringo was a really awesome musician, right? So I think when we talk about so many people that I admire, like Steve Smith, Dave Weckl, these guys were all influenced by Ringo. So if you like anybody that came out in the last 50 years, they probably liked Ringo. So you're probably being influenced by him, even if you don't listen to the Beatles.
How about you?
But I mean, he was the blueprint, the blueprint for the modern rock drummer.
Well, Grant, you've taught some of the best in the business, like guys that are on TV shows all over the world. Your list is great, and you deserve all the accolades. When a drummer comes in there, a young drummer, I don't mean do you try to push it down their throat. Do you try to incorporate any of Ringo into the younger drummers today?
Oh yeah, obviously, because the first thing I want to instill in them, even in a first lesson, is the ability to work with the time, create a really good musical feel, and a lot of that goes back to Ringo, because in pop music, it was so groundbreaking. I mean, he just, as I said earlier, he just approached the drum set a whole different way. He just threw the rules aside. He must be an extremely talented guy. That's all I can say, because he was able to put himself in that situation without a lot of training, and to be able to come up with these parts that who would have thought of that, and I constantly pull up I get right on the computer and pull up YouTube and show these young guys, look at how Ringo played this. What do you think he was thinking there? And I try to get them to think like Ringo thought, and hopefully that instills something in them, so as they develop that they can approach music like that.
Ringo reminds me of a pitcher, and I know you're a big Baltimore Orioles fan for a long time, Grant. I'm a big red machine. Don't go back to 1970, please. Anyway, we talk about pitchers, and they all want to throw the right pitch. If it's a curveball, if it's a knuckleball, if it's that slider or splitter, and the fastball. Ringo's like a pitcher to me. Always, throwing the right pitch in there, always throwing the right beat, the right groove. What's your take on that, Doug?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I had mentioned there's a series that I saw that Dave Stewart, the guitar player, he was famous for being in the Eurythmics. Right. He has a show that's kind of like he does things with musicians, like Off the Record or something, and Ringo was on. And the cool thing about Ringo is that I think is a lesson for all of us is, like, when he talked about playing Come Together, and he couldn't do a descending drum fill because a lot of English drummers lead with their left hand. Bonham was like that too, and because he couldn't go on the hi-hat and then go rack tom, floor tom, he had to start on the hi-hat, then go to the floor tom, then finish on the rack tom, and he's like, I can't do it with my right hand. I can't go. And he said, if you listen to a lot of my fills, there's syncopation between the groove and the fill because I had to realign my hands to get to the rack tom. So a lot of those classic.
So Doug, some of his limitations became some of his assets, right?
Yeah. Yes. And the thing is, like today, I would say to a drummer in one of my students, I'd be like, dude, we got to work on your right hand. If you can't lead with your right hand, we got to work on that. But Ringo was like, you know what? That's how I do it. You know.
What you just said, Kenny Arnold, he did a song 1 2 boom. Was it something?
Yeah, I heard.
Yeah, he said the same thing you just said. He started with his left.
Yeah, and it's weird when you don't do that and you have to. You're like, what? You know. But that's the cool thing about Ringo because he was collaborating with the band, and they said, yeah, instead of just riding on the floor tom, how about if you do some kind of like weird drum fill that kind of goes with the bass part? And he's like, he tries some different things, and then he's like, oh, I'll do this, but I can't do it that way. I have to do it this way because I can't physically perform. And instead of sitting there practicing it, he's just like, nope, that's how I do it. You know, and the cool thing is that he just doesn't make any apologies. You know, it's like I'm sure, you know, he could have practiced it, but he's like, no, that's how I do it. You know. And, you know, that's the great thing. It's like be comfortable enough to say, you know what, I'm going to do it the way it feels right. And, you know, I know we now in this day and age, we're all, you know, working hard to get gigs. So it's like, you know, oh, you want me to juggle fire while I'm drumming? If I'm going to get the gig, I'll learn how to do it, you know. But back then, you know, it was like, you know, that's how he did it. He was a member of the Beatles. That's how he played. And we probably would have heard a much different album if he wasn't the drummer, you know. So.
You know, before I let the great I met him at the Delaware Drum Show. We had a great conversation. What a warm human being. What a great family guy and a great educator. Before I let the great Grant Menifee go, Grant, you know, in 50 years from now, you know, when we mentioned Ringo, you know, are we going to have the same thoughts or different thoughts? You know, what's going to happen 50 years from now? What do you think?
Well, I think Ringo just mellows as we go along in the whole conversation, and it just gets better and better. And I think 50 years from now, they're going to look back at some of those recordings and just say, how in the hell did he even think of that? You know? Yeah. And it's going to be even more amazing to what we think. You know, a little earlier today, I was looking at the Beatles, that 1964 Ed Sullivan show, and they had some pretty good close-ups, and I just thought to myself, nobody played like that at that time. Nobody. Yeah. You know. Yeah. And how did he think of that? And a lot of times, and you know, Doug was talking about creativity, and you know, when I have a student, and I've had some of my most famous students that I've ever taught, and I look back at their first lesson, and you know, I'll just have them play. And there's a couple guys that just played really different. I mean, really different. And they didn't approach it the same way that any regular drummer would approach it.
How was Matt Halpern? How was Matt Halpern's first?
Matt. I'm not even thinking of Matt because Matt's chops are so way beyond most of us. Matt and I were like, you know, I could talk to you an hour about Matt, but I mean, when I was feeding Matt polyrhythms, oh my gosh, he was just eating this stuff up. But let me tell you about a guy that's not as famous, but he plays with a band called Future Islands, and I would compare him to like Ringo. You know, it's Mike Lowry. Mike, I had Mike when I was teaching at Towson University, and I had Mike play, and it was some of the weirdest looking stuff and sounding stuff that I ever heard. And I said, Mike, whatever you do going forward, we're gonna work on a lot of stuff. Do not change your style, please. Do not. It was just so good, and to this day, he developed a lot of chops, and we worked on a lot of things, and he still has that same spirit, and I think that that's what Ringo was. It was just so fresh. It was so pure, and it was so innocent. And as Doug said, he said, "This is the way. Here I am. This is the way I play, and that's it."
Well,
and
always.
And if I get people that play like that, I'm not changing it.
Well, anybody who goes to the Grant Menifee School comes out a better person. Grant, I can't thank you enough for your time. It's always
thank you, Joe.
Honor,
Doug, nice to always talk to you.
Yeah, you too, Grant. It's a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Grant.
Have a great rest of your gig.
Thanks, man. Great.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks.
We got one more guy on the line, Doug. We got the great Scott Metko. Scott, Joe Gansas, and Doug Miola on Around the Kit. What's up, Scott?
Good evening to the hardest working man in drum radio business.
How are you, brother?
I am doing fine. Hello from Nashville.
Good. You got myself and the great Doug Miola. I don't know if you know Doug, but he's a great educator. He's a great drummer. He's part of my show. If you don't, Scott, Doug, Scott.
Hey Doug,
Scott.
how are you?
I'm good. How's it going?
It is going well on a Sunday night.
Sunday night in Nashville, and we're talking about Ringo Starr. Tell me about Ringo. Scott Metko Ringo. What's going on there?
I've been listening to your show tonight, and I have to say I came upon Ringo. I had kind of a little different journey to Ringo Starr because I wasn't really old enough to experience the Ed Sullivan phenomena that happened. Right. And when I was a little kid growing up, the biggest musical influence in my life was my dad. He was an accordion player signed to Decca Records, and we were listening to country music. The first version of Act Naturally that I heard was the Buck Owens version, and the Matchbox version I heard was Carl Perkins. And something that no one else has talked about tonight was the influences of Ringo. So I was listening to that stuff as a little kid. And then when I got into a band, out of high school, my first rock band, they were doing Beatles songs. And it just really wasn't a big phenomenon for me as I was growing up because of the music I was listening to. So I remember trying to play Ticket to Ride without any preconceived notions of who this guy was. I didn't have the history, and I'm like going, whoa, this is really cool. This is a unique drum beat. How in the world do I play this? It was like something I'd never heard before. So I came about it later and started to realize his influence once I was reading Modern Drummer and hearing people start to talk about Ringo Starr's impact. And then I was in a cover band in Minneapolis in the 90s, and one of the guys wanted to play the song Rain, which is not a hit song. It's a song that nobody talks about, and I love that song. It was such a unique approach. If you listen to the placement of the fills in that song, it's like nothing I'd ever heard before. And it was the flip side of the 45 paperback writer. It was never put out on a single or on an album. And that music made an impact to me. So then as time has gone by, I've gone back and listened to various things and just have come to realize later in life. For example, your last caller said, I had to come around to the Beatles because he wasn't a flashy guy when I was younger. I kind of came around to Ringo later on when I became more of a song guy and a music guy, and then his approach made total sense. And listening to Kenny Aronoff talk and a lot of the other guys that I really loved coming up, Jeff Porcaro and Steve Jordan. Yeah. I liked the pocket guys, the groove guys, which I'm sure was the next generation influenced by Ringo. Like your last caller said, he was really the first song guy. I loved the next generation of song guys that came out in the 80s and 90s that were kind of like the next generation of Ringo. So his influence is definitely there, man. It just keeps getting stronger and stronger as time goes on.
That's so funny because Doug Miola is also a huge Steve Jordan guy, right, Doug?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, You know, it's like you said, you know, you have like Nate Smith, Steve Jordan, but all those guys, when I dug deep into all the influences that influenced me, like Steve Jordan was a big influence of mine for years. And then I got into like his appreciation for people like Ringo and Charlie Watts, you know, and I'm like,
sure.
Oh, I appreciate that so much more because now I know more. You know, when I was impressed by the flash and the speed when I was a younger drummer, and then as I started to really get it, you know, like, oh, that's not going to really pay the bills unless you're, you know, touring with a band, you know, that's known for that, you know.
Well, Doug,
exactly.
I think we matured. Is that the right word? We matured as drummers.
I would say. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you get, you know, as much as we love the powerhouse drumming,
right.
You get that out of your system, and then you're like, wow, listen to the dynamics in that groove, right? And those are the things that, you know, we appreciate from songwriter and groove drummers because they really enhance the song, right?
Well, if I can, before I brought up the analogy of pitchers, guys, we're talking to Scott Mecco and Doug Miola, 646-787-8027. I talked about the pitchers and always wanted to throw the right pitch, and Ringo's throwing the right thing. But also, I love watching a 1-0 baseball game. I don't want to see the home runs all the time, 18 home runs in a game, a 14-12 game, 10-8. I like to see the 1-0 game. And what you're talking about, Doug, is the same thing in music. You don't want to hear the powerhouse guys. You want to watch that 1-0 game, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because that's what moves people. I'm not a big fan of playing music that only other musicians get into. I want everybody to get into what my band is playing, whoever I'm playing with. I want the average person to be digging it, and that's what's always been a priority for me. Everybody loves the Beatles. Everybody's been impacted by that, not just musicians. So that's where I guess I've had kind of a kinship to Ringo's approach. And hearing that story earlier on in your show about how Ringo would not sit down in the drums unless he was playing with other people, I just listened to Victor Wooten's TED Talk last night, and he speaks very eloquently on that same topic. The title of this video or this TED Talk is called Music as a Language, and it is really about what we should be doing is conversing with other people, conversing with our bandmates. You know, Joe, when I was on your show in June, one of the things that just popped out of my mouth for whatever reason, I just said this quote, music is conversation. And that's something that you happen to like, and I don't know why I said it at that particular time in the interview, but it kind of gets back to that same thing, that music is something we should be sharing with the bandmates on stage, we should be sharing with everyone in the audience. And Victor had just a great take on that, which is very similar to what Ringo's trying to say. If I'm going to play drums, I want to play music. I want to play music with other people. And my dad was the same way. I never saw him. I mean, he was a virtuoso player, but he got his technique, he got his skill that he needed, and then he just played gigs and did albums. And he played gigs all the time and had a TV show. And that's what I grew up observing, was the magic that he made on stage. That's why I wanted to play music, sitting on the same bandstand with my dad and just seeing the way he played and the way people reacted to it and the way he took time with everybody, and hearing these stories about how Ringo is such a great person, that makes total sense. I mean, I don't want to hear stories about somebody that's so hot on themselves and how great of a player they are and they're a jerk to people. I mean, that's not what it's about.
We are live. Doug, you have to go, bro?
I still got some time. I still got a few minutes. Yeah.
Good.
Stay on as long as I can with you.
Let's keep going up. Scott Mecco and Doug Miola. You know, one thing I didn't talk about too much tonight is a lot of, you know, what Scott said. You know, who were some of Ringo's influences? I'm not sure that, if I really know that. Scott, who were some of Ringo's influences? You know, back then.
Well, I can only assume, I mean, the drummer for Carl Perkins at the time when Matchbox was out, that's W.S. Holland.
Okay.
And if you don't know anything about him or haven't had him on your show, man, you got to, because this was Carl Perkins' drummer. Then he was the house drummer at Sun Records during the Millionaire Quartet sessions. Then he was Johnny Cash's drummer.
Nice.
And you get into his stories, man, another very unique player, a very song-orientated player. And I have to believe that Ringo must have been listening to him because the band was digging on Carl Perkins. So
yeah.
I'm kind of putting two and two together that was
cool.
Probably in there.
How about you, Doug?
Willie,
go ahead.
Well,
go ahead,
I'm just going to say the drummer from Buck Owens, Willie Cantu, which probably, I'm not sure, but he's probably the guy that played on Act Naturally. That country music had to influence them. There is a drummer here in town, plays an R&B jam on Thursday nights. The drummer's name is Jimmy Odie, and he was playing with Little Richard. And he tells me a story about playing in Liverpool in the late 50s when Little Richard was, huge, and the Beatles opened up for Little Richard. And he was telling me about his conversations and how he got to meet Ringo, and Ringo kind of looked up to him, and Ringo gave him a drum. That'd be a cool guy to have on your show and hear those kind of stories. So
yeah, absolutely.
Everybody's got somebody they looked up to. There's always something
Sure.
that came before.
I want to ask you both one more question before we say goodnight tonight. Doug, of course, we're playing different genres now, much different than the Beatles. But, when you listen to the Beatles today, does drum parts surprise you, if that's the right word? Do some of Ringo's stuff surprise you now?
Absolutely. Well, I'm sure, if you or Scott or, anybody, I know Kenny Arnoff was talking about this earlier, if you ever have to play a Beatles song, and you really recognize, you hear it on the radio, when you're growing up or you listen to it, and it's just, okay, yeah, it's a backbeat, it's a fill here. Then you sit down and actually have to learn it, and you're surprised at the, getting the proper feel and the timing on some of the grooves. I noticed that with Ringo. I've noticed it with Charlie Watts.
Yes, sir.
Simple, but there's an art to being able to execute it if you want to do it right. You could sit there and lay down, a generic beat that's proper, but if you really want to get into the feel of the music to make the song sound authentic, it's not just sit down and play, the patterns. There's a lot to it. And, it's like, I think we take that for granted because, you think, oh, okay, pop, pop rock, it's not that involved. But, there's some pretty, interesting things to consider when you're learning those parts, and I didn't recognize it until I sat down and learned it, and I'm just like, wow, there's some crazy stuff going on,
How about you, Scott?
Deceptively simple.
Yeah, if we use the word surprise with Doug, even now when I hear Beatles stuff, I'm saying, wow, that's pretty cool. Does anything, catch your ear, differently now than it did years ago?
Well, I personally really hear things like dynamics way differently than I did when I was younger. I pay attention to that stuff more. I pay attention to phrasing. I pay attention to sometimes there's a little push or pull in the timing, in the tempo. And, those are all things that are intricate things that make a song and a part what they are. And they could easily be glossed over, and I'm doing a lot of covers with the project I'm doing right now. And even something like I Want You to Want Me by Cheap Trick. Yeah. I've heard tons of bands play that, but if you don't play the accents and the ghost notes to those songs, they just sound like, like a very sterile reproduction. And that's the same thing with a lot of these songs. You could easily go in and just kind of make your way through, but putting in the dynamics and the feel that they used. And I mean, Ringo did some crazy stuff like with his hi-hat work, on some of their up-tempo songs. You just don't sit down and bash out an eighth note pattern. You kind of have to approach it differently.
How about you, Scott?
Right, I agree. I agree. Yeah, very much so. Not only with Ringo, but with Charlie Watts. When I started doing Stones tunes and I'd pull the hi-hat off on 2 and 4 like he does, it gave it a little more breath, and it made total sense. And those runs he does around the toms, it just, with the little buzzes, the little buzz strokes worked in there, it's like, whoa, it was like a completely different thing once I started doing that. Now, we're talking about Steve Jordan, and I don't know if any of you remember the interview he did for Modern Drummer talking about how Keith Richards took him to school when they were doing the Hail, Hail, Rock and Roll movie. And here Steve Jordan comes in, this hotshot drummer doing the Blues Brothers records, and Keith is like, what are you playing all those notes for? What are you playing so busy for? And they started doing the Chuck Berry stuff, and he's like, man, no, that's not it. It's this kind of shuffle. It's between a shuffle and a straight beat. It's that land right in between. And Keith totally schooled Steve Jordan at that time. That was like 1982. And I think, this is just my opinion, I think there was a Steve Jordan before the Hail, Hail, Rock and Roll, and I think there's a different Steve Jordan after he went through that Hail, Hail, Rock and Roll experience, where he became a less chopsy, more of a groove guy. And I think it was Keith taking him to school on how to play Chuck Berry.
Nice.
That's just my opinion. But that's another situation just like that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, because I know if you watch any of the clips of him playing with the David Letterman Band or the Blues Brothers before that, and you see how he played after that, right? I mean, like, he was really into, like, fusion and stuff like that, and then he just became this, like, master of groove, and you're absolutely right. I think, those old, some of those blues songs and stuff where you have to let things really breathe and punch and pull, stuff is all feel, right? And the artistry of being able to execute that, I think, sometimes gets lost because, of course, now for the last, 20 years, we're dealing with, computer recording, digital recording, but I mean, you don't get the, no, let's let that weird overtone ring out, let's do that weird, little fill, and no, let's clean that up and let's quantize it and make it tight, it's like, no, but those were the things that made these drummers like Ringo have a personality, because they really let them exist. They let them be who they were on their instrument,
Absolutely.
And people respond to this music. They may not even realize it, the average person, but they respond to this music and they like it and they want to hear it and they want to dance to it.
Yeah.
So what makes a popular song a popular song? Why are those Beatles songs so popular? It just made people feel good, not just musicians out there, but so many people.
Guys, great stuff. Doug, I can't thank you for helping me out this last hour. Scott, great stuff as always. I'll have you back on the show a couple of months. Thank you so much, guys. Scott Mecco and Doug Miola. Guys, thank you so much. I'm about to say goodnight, but it's been a great show. And you guys, thank you, Scott Mecco and Doug Miola. Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
right,
Scott.
good night,
nice
everybody.
to talk to you. Joe, thanks for having me on.
You got it, brother. I'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks.
All right.
Scott Mecco and Doug Miola. Great stuff. Guys, we had a tremendous show tonight. I want to do one promo, and then I'll come back and give you my last closing thoughts. What am I going to play here? I'm going to play one little Ford drums for you guys.
1, 2, 3, 4. This portion of Around the Kit is brought to you by the Ford Drum Company. Ford Drums craft some of the finest drums and related products on the planet. Ford will not manufacture a commodity. They are creating heirloom, best-in-class instruments and accessories. They won't settle for less. Why should you? Visit the Ford Drum Company today at FordDrums.com. That's FordDrums.com.
This portion of Around the Kit is brought to you by Booty Shakers. Booty Shakers and Little Booty Shakers are drum isolation mounts. These drum accessories prevent the loss of drum tone, sustain, and resonance due to the drum's contact with the floor and or drum hardware. Your floor tom, tom-tom, rack tom, snare, and entire drum set will thank you. You can visit Booty Shakers at TNRProducts.com. That's TNRProducts.com.
And now back to Around the Kit with Joe Gansas.
Guys, we got to go. We had a great show. Just wanted to say thank you to all my guests tonight. It started off with a great roundtable, as usual. Benny Sabone, John Bessa, Dave Stark, Daniel Glass, and a surprise guest we had the great Matt Patella. We had the great Kenny Arnold for about an hour and a half. Then the list of great drummers just started. Greg Bissonette, Bernie Dressel, Gary Astridge, Carl Latham, Grant Menifee, Doug Miola, and Scott Metko. I want to thank my newest sponsors, Smyrna Cymbals, SYMRNA.com. Go to SmyrnaCymbals.com and check out all they do. Great cymbals. We love all they do. SYMRNA.com. Also, Humesenberg, great drum cases. Go to Humesenberg.com. Guys, we have a great show next week. A living legend, Alex Acuna. We welcome back a great drummer, Stephen Chamberlain, and a newcomer from the UK, Mark Smith. Guys, thank you so much. Always a pleasure. Great Ringo tribute. I guess some closing thoughts on Ringo. You know, he's just that songwriting drummer that you want in your band, coming up with the right parts and the right beats at the right time. And we thank Ringo for his historic career. He's still going strong, and we love him. So we say thank you to Ringo Starr. Guys, great show. We'll talk to you guys next week on Around the Kid. Thanks, guys.